6324. So that's for the public to sign in. Public site people, leave the meeting, go to your email, sign into the other meeting. Bye.
All right. Thank
I
you.
think I'm gonna public site.
Thanks, everybody. Now I'm trying to get out of here.
Let's just give people another 30 seconds to get to their right meeting.
Nancy, what's the public site number?
That's not your pencil. It's over there.
298-007-6324.
That's for the public site and building.
You're going to need to go into your email,
Yeah, I got it.
okay,
I got it.
and click on the email and click on that for the email. But Dion, I don't have a way to leave the meeting. It says the only thing I can do is end the meeting. So if I do that, will I stop your meeting? Okay, how do I do that? Okay. Okay, thanks, Nick. Participants, and I see invite, mute. Not the me one, but the other one. Let's see. Okay, done. So then I can leave the meeting now and I'll go join the other one. Thank you.
Finance.
Bye.
Deanna, are you still with us?
I am still here.
Good. All right. Well, we're good to go, you think?
Yep, we're ready to go.
I'd like to call to order this meeting, the first virtual meeting of the Board of Finance of the town of on this Tuesday, April 14th, 2020. And I'd like us all to start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the
To the flag of the United
United States of America,
and to the
republic for which
it stands,
one
one
nation,
nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. I think we probably learned a little bit in that discussion regarding how to separate the two calls, but just to go through it again, I believe we have some people who are on the line or in the meeting just on a telephone. To those people, you can use the *9 function, and we, Dion in particular, will see an icon that you are raising your hand and you would like to speak.
That's all you need to know.
Just on the phone, you can hit *9 and Dion will be able to see that you'd like to talk, and then she'll recognize you kind of in the order as people come in. As for all the folks who are in the picture, I think you can see that you basically have the same functionality through Zoom. You can raise your hand through the raise your hand function, and we'll do the same thing where Dion will try to keep this as a sequential thing. As soon as you get into the queue to speak, then Dion will recognize folks in that order. I think that is about all for now, right, Dion, as to just the logistics?
Yes, I think we're good. And I will try to call you in order, so bear with me.
Okay.
Sorry, Dion,
Yes.
are you going to mute us? Like, remember when we tried last night that you would unmute as you pick the person?
Well, while we were talking today, as far as the way I understand it, when Nick was explaining that I really can't mute everybody. So we're just going to have to use our manners and not talk over each other.
Okay, I didn't know if you were going to leave the Board of Finance unmuted and mute after public comment. That's all.
Yeah. Let me just see how this goes. Okay.
Sure.
All right. Thanks.
just a general request is for folks to be patient. It's the first time we're going through this, and I think we're going to have, some bumps in the road as already demonstrated. This is the first virtual meeting of the Board of Finance, so in a way, we're kind of making history. So at this point,
By far the largest.
and so at this point, we enter on the agenda the segment for public comment. So again, I would ask the people who are on a phone to use the *9 functionality, and the folks who are in Zoom to use the raise your hand functionality, and Dion will recognize you for comment. So at this point, turning it over to you, Dion.
Okay, so if Brad Coates, I'm going to unmute. Okay, Brad, are you there?
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. And just one other thing, I will need for you to give me your name and your address.
Brad Colts, 1 Fairchild Drive, Bethel.
Thank you.
Thank you. I have 2 comments to share. One, I wanted to share that the Bethel Business Network, we had an informal survey. We've got about 117 members now. 100% of the roughly 25% of our members that shared either by phone or email their opinions, 100% of the business members that we were able to survey oppose an increase in the mill rate for this fiscal year. I just want to point out that the business community is especially hard hit, whether it's a restaurant who's lost all of their dine-in revenue, businesses that have had to close but still have rent and other expenses. These folks are deeply hurt, and the fact that there's some low-cost loans and things available does not mean they're going to survive this crisis. So there was a very deep sentiment about that. I also want to point out that there is a fair amount of confusion that came out during many of these conversations. Many folks have not read the entire budget. I know it's a shock to everybody on the board. There is a general misconception based on a lot of social media chat, I believe, that the current budget with this, the proposed increase that came out from your last formal meeting where you were going to present that, I believe, to the town for town meeting, that projected increase included funds for and earmarked for COVID-specific services. And it's my understanding that it doesn't. So I was going to hope that someone on the board at some point could speak to that. And I just want to share, switching gears, that on a personal level, it's my hope that the board will sharpen their pencils, realizing the deep devastation that's already happening. And I think we're only midway through this crisis, and actually find the ability to actually cut this budget from the current year rather than increase it. So those are my comments, and I appreciate the opportunity to share them. And I have to say, having done a number of these over the years, this is actually off to a pretty good start, Bob. So thank you.
And Brad, thank you. Let me just answer the question regarding the COVID-19 expenses, should someone else in the queue have the same question. The budget that this Board of Finance put together, and I'll recap kind of the process that we went through and how we got to today. But the budget that this Board of Finance looked at last for purposes of bringing to the public hearing for further public input did not include COVID-19 expenses. It was that budget, that proposal was a pre-COVID-19 world budget.
Hello, this is Gil. Am I in the right meeting?
Gil, no, I think you want the public site. Check your email.
I'm in. I can't get there.
This is the Board of Finance meeting. You are more than welcome.
Thank you very much, but I'd like to be in the meeting and I'm supposed to be. I'll hang up and try again.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Thank you for clearing that up, Bob.
Certainly, thank you.
Okay, Billy Michaels.
Am I live?
Uh,
Can you hear me?
just a second.
That's right.
When they
Do I
show
have to-
up. This is Stephanie's friend.
All right, Billy.
No. Yeah. Do I have to unmute something?
Kroposky.
No, we can hear you.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Big. Cut.
I'll sign
wants a
in.
budget cut every single time and thinks that
Sorry,
everybody's
you-
ripping him off.
If you're not the speaker, could you
What?
mute your phone, please?
Board of Finance.
Yeah, there's
Because
other
the-
voices.
The town voted that the Board of Finance can set the Board of Ed meeting.
Excuse
Budget.
me.
Yeah, I don't know whose voice that is.
I don't either.
The functionality is working. It's a Michelle. Ben. Michelle, if that's you, if you could mute your phone while Mr. Michael is speaking, please. Go ahead. Sorry.
Tell me when I'm ready.
You're ready.
Okay, Billy Michael, 27.5 Fleetwood Avenue. When Mr. Manfreda started this meeting, this nightmare of a meeting as far as citizen participation goes, he starts with the Pledge of Allegiance. And central to that Pledge of Allegiance is the consent of the governed. And this budget process, denying the citizens a right to vote on this budget, and to have 7 people on a Board of Finance decide, I don't know how many people on the board of the 7 people lost their jobs, but everything that I have read from anybody with a budget in this town that constructs a budget, they have jobs. Everybody that has a job is lobbying the Board of Finance, who I'm assuming have jobs, to raise taxes on people that don't have jobs. I know one person in a town of 20,000 people that has the virus. I know hundreds of people that are out of work, hundreds of people that are out of work. And we are going to raise taxes on them without a referendum, and there's no pushback. There's 82 towns with budget referenda, and there's no cry. Where's the people pushing back against a decree that robs us of our most fundamental freedom? I see this as a complete exploitation of our citizens' rights because of this medical emergency, this decree. So I think that we should have an uprising to push the decision back. We have all the way to June 30th. I don't know why this rush. Every time there's a rush in this town, I get suspicious. There was a rush to get the Aquarian water passed fast. Let's get this done. Let's get this to a referendum. I think we need time. I think things are going to change over time. So I'm against this whole process that rushes this process into May. We have plenty of time. I remember in 1998, we had 6 referendums. We were voting in August and the town didn't stop. And people had the right to vote on a budget. We did not lose our basic fundamental freedoms. And I'll remember another day, there was a year in 1992, we had 3 or 4 referenda, and this has got to do with part of the budget. We have people that are out of work. We have people that are going to lose their ability to pay their rent, pay their mortgages. They're going to be these are critical chaos in their life. And in our budget, everybody's getting raises. In the schools, we got $188,000 worth of raises for 17 school administrators. The reason I brought up the early 1990s was when Darlene O'Connor was the head of the Board of Education facing 3 referendum. The school administrators voluntarily took out their increases. And this is the time to do it now, to go back to the school administration. Where's all this inequality of income? The people, where are all Bethel's Occupy Wall Street supporters? This is the 1% versus the 99%. How can this budget, a 3.5% tax increase, being placed on people who have lost their jobs, give raises to people making $150,000? The immorality of this. And every single aspect of this event grows government. Everything. We need money because the grand list grows. The grand list is growing. It's supposed to help people. Oh, wait, the grand list is growing. We need more people in the building department. We need people for the inspectors. We need people. Okay, then we have trouble because people don't have money. So we need more social services. We have the kids out of school. No one goes to school. We need more money for distance learning. Everything is seized as an opportunity to grow and spend money by the government. So you have a lot of people queuing up. I've spoken my piece. I'm against this, the spending. I'm against the tax increase. I'm against this, the process of denying the people the right to vote. And for this Board of Finance to be known as the one in history that implements a mill rate increase without the consent of the people they are sworn to serve is just appalling to me. Thank you for your time, Board of Finance.
Thank you. Dion, next.
Yes, Bill Hillman.
Hi, thank you. Bill Hillman, 86 Walnut Hill Road. I had sent some correspondence. You can read that on your own. The main gist of that correspondence echoes what Brad Colt said, which is a 0 increase to the mill rate. Echoing everything that's been said so far, people in this town are hurting, seriously. My wife is on unemployment. I don't know of any person that doesn't have at least one, if not all, wage earners on unemployment or hurting right now. And it would be unconscionable for the town to impose a raise, especially without a referendum at this point. Now, there's also some priorities. Public safety is going to have to be a priority for a number of months. This peak that we're about to pass doesn't mean that we're out of the woods. So I know that the Board of Finance has approved one additional headcount for the police department. I know that Captain Pugner has requested 2. If there is to be an increase, it has to be a zero-sum game, and the funding for that has to come from someplace else. Add to that what would be over $1 million in cuts to enable a 0 change in the mill rate. I think that's necessary. And I understand it means that some town services may have to be reduced. Perhaps hours are reduced. Perhaps wages and staff will need to be reduced, just like the families of most of Bethel are already reduced. The Board of Finance needs to account for that. One way to do it is to just pass last year's budgets forward again, but that would also be irresponsible. So I'd ask you to do everything that you can. There are some members of the Board of Finance who will later be proposing certain ideas that in fact can achieve a 0 increase to the mill rate. I would ask that the majority listen very carefully to the minority who will propose that and seriously consider any and all actions that can keep the mill rate changed to 0. Thank you.
Thank you.
Courtney Martin. Oh, wait 1 second. There you go.
All right, Courtney Martin, 38 Star Lane. I'd first like to address the fact that I'm speaking to you tonight, not as a Board of Ed member, but as a parent of 3 children in 3 separate schools who are all currently receiving online distance learning. Although I would like to commend the teachers, the administrators, and staff for the phenomenal job they are doing with the limited resources that they have, and their ability to put together an online program as quickly as they did. They should be commended for their efforts. However, the honest and unfortunate truth is that online distance learning does not replace classroom instruction. The real issue we are faced with is come September, every student will be behind in one way or another. The question is, how far behind are you willing to let them get? It comes to a point where it's going to be impossible for them to recover. By reducing the funding that was proposed, you will quite frankly be setting our children up for failure. Before distance learning, we were already short-staffed on teachers, support staff, and interventionists. By reducing the proposed budget, you are not only further limiting the resources, but hindering our ability to recover from all the learning that was lost. Future budgets will be affected because more and more interventionists will be needed to service the students who didn't need it before, but they now can't catch up. If class size increases, further strain will be put on the teachers, who will not only have the ability to make sure that all children are where they need to be. This possible reduction is extremely short-sighted. If anything, we should be allocating as many resources as possible into the schools that make sure these kids don't fail. Because if we aren't prepared when they come back, this will not be a one-year issue. It will go on for years and years. And I'm not just talking about the kids who need intervention and aren't getting it. I'm talking about every single student that receives an education from the Bethel Public Schools. We cannot let these children down. And because of that, I'm asking you to leave the budget as is. Thank you.
Okay. I'm sorry. Jen Larson.
Hey. Jen Larson, 128 Grassy Plain Street. I'm again not speaking as a Board of Education member. I am speaking as a private citizen here in Bethel, a educator, and a parent of multiple children who've been through the Bethel school system. The Bethel schools have always done a phenomenal job with the limited resources they've had. They've made do and made do over and over and over again. Our numbers of students have increased exponentially, and they've still made do. This can't go on forever. And every year that we make do is actually like a cut, because you're giving us the same and we're doing more with it. So therefore, it's not equal. I know that things are hard. I know that people are without jobs. I understand the difficulty that the position that people are in. I have seen it, with my neighbors, with friends, with many people in town that they're suffering. And I understand that. What I'm asking you to do is to keep us at least a status quo budget so that we can have exactly the same as we had this year and be able to try to make do for one more year in regards to the situation that we're in at this time, being that we have to be cognizant of our neighbors and their situation, and that asking for more is a difficult thing, but please don't make us do with less. As Courtney said, our kids are coming back and they're going to be at a deficit. So by giving us a deficit, it makes it harder for us to catch up. And that makes it extremely difficult for the educators, for the parents, and for the students. Parents are in way over their heads right now, and they're desperately seeking help from their teachers. I know that I get daily calls from parents who are desperate for me to help them in some way with their child while they are home with them. And they're desperately waiting for school to start again. And these children are going to come back with needs from trauma that they've faced over the time that they've been out, losing family members, losing friends, neighbors. Children are going to be in trauma from all of this. And we need to be able to meet them and help them get past that. And we can't do that if you cut what we already even have. And I'm not even asking for anything new. So please keep in mind where we're coming from and what we're going to face when school starts again. And keep that in mind when you're deciding what you feel the town can afford to give. So by asking for that status quo, I think I'm just asking us to keep everything the same as it is now and meet what we need to meet contractually for all of our contracts. Thank you.
Thank you, Jen.
In the comment section, there's been some people that have asked me to add them to the comments. You'll need to go over to the right-hand side of your screen where the participants are. And at the bottom, there is the option for you to raise your hand. It's not something that I can do for you. Okay. So next person is Melanie O'Brien. Hold 1 second. I don't know why it's giving me a hard time. Unmute. Okay, there you are.
I'm good. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. Manfreda and all the Board of Finance members, in order to enter it into the public record, I'm going to read a memo from me as the chair of the Board of Education and a memo from Dr. Carver to the Board of Finance and Board of Selectmen. This information was previously provided to the members of both boards, but is not included in the Board of Finance meeting materials online. It
Melanie.
is posted. Yes.
I'm so sorry. Will you just give me your address?
Oh, I'm sorry. Sure. 12 Cross Hill Road, obviously Bethel.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you. So this information was provided to board members, but is not on the online materials. So I would direct you to the Bethel Public Schools website under Board of Education 2020-2021 Education Budget Documents, and then you can see these materials. The first memo reads as follows: to Board of Selectmen and Board of Finance, from Melanie O'Brien, Chair, Board of Education. Date April 10 to 2020. During the budget preparation and deliberation process, the district presented a detailed picture of the challenges faced by the growth in enrollment, more students with needs requiring support systems, and persistent social and emotional needs of children throughout the district. These are trends that are on the rise. It is our responsibility as a school district to address the academic, social, and emotional needs of all of our children. The consequences of COVID-19 include social isolation, distance learning from home, and limiting traditional school offered supports. It is anticipated that most children will be lagging behind at the start of the 2020 school year, as distance learning is not classroom learning and family members are not professional educators. Classroom teachers, interventionists, and special education staff will have to bridge the gap between distance learning proficiency at year end and grade level expectations at the start of the next school year. Our most vulnerable children will be hit hardest. Our strained resources will be further stretched by the effects of COVID-19. Though we understand the economic uncertainty and financial stress that many families are experiencing, the board is cautioning against a knee-jerk reaction to cut the Board of Education budget. History has shown us that there are lasting and detrimental effects of understaffing administrators, teachers, and support staff. Dr. Carver has put together the attached memorandum to provide general information about the impact of potential further reductions to the Board of Education budget. The board has been and will continue to be transparent about the demonstrated needs of all of our children, as well as the budget drivers. It is imperative that our town leaders and community understand our resources, the growing needs of our children, and the consequences of further reductions in the education budget. Dr. Carver's memo is as follows: to Bethel Selectmen and Board of Finance, from Dr. Christine Carver, Superintendent of Schools. Date April 10 to 2020, regarding considerations for 2020-21 budget. As you deliberate, we wanted to provide you with the impact of any future reductions to the Board of Education operating budget. At our presentation, we already spoke about the district being at a crossroad. While we know that there is real concern about the status of the economy, we caution you to recognize the long-term implication of significant reductions. In addition to all the significant challenges we described in our budget presentation, including increased enrollment, increased elementary class size, open paren, elementary classes of 26 to 28 students, close paren, more challenging demographics which require more supports, and the social emotional needs of all of our students, the closure due to COVID-19 has added a new layer to potential issues and exposures. While we commend our staff for doing a phenomenal job given the circumstances, we anticipate that our students will have academic gaps starting the 2020-21 school year. The virtual services we are providing do not equate to the experiences we provide in a classroom. We will have a challenge making up for these deficits. Further reductions could have lasting impact on a generation of children. Education is an asset to the fiscal health of the community. Long-term implications of increased class sizes, failure to provide adequate intervention services, and stripping of what have become core programs within our schools will deteriorate our system and negatively impact our community. We have dedicated staff who have always exceeded expectations. They can work in surrounding communities, which provide better compensation. They choose to stay with us because of our culture. Reductions in staff and creating increased expectations will affect morale and our culture, which could drive teachers to look towards more affluent districts. This will exacerbate an already existing issue. We were required by Governor Lamont's executive orders to pay the majority of our contracts and labor expenses, despite our school closure. Therefore, it will limit the potential for the end of the year savings that might have helped to mitigate the situation. While we made the best of the circumstances, we were not able to replicate all of our services for students with disabilities. We likely will have to provide additional services in the next fiscal school year as required by state and federal law. Reductions will result in layoffs and loss of positions. 85.4% of our operating budget is salaries and benefits. The district, like municipalities, does not pay into unemployment. Therefore, we would be required to pay up to 60% of the unemployment expenses. This would not only significantly impact the services our students receive, but also perpetuate economic downturn. We wanted to provide you with an idea of what potential reductions could be in terms of loss of positions and/or layoffs. We could not make any reductions in special education as we are mandated by state and federal law to provide those programs. We have to provide transportation to our students, St. Mary's, Nonawag, and Abbott Tech. Between staff, special education, and transportation, there's not a lot of discretionary spending. We wanted to provide you with a look at what the impact would be if we have significant reductions. The first chart provides an overview of the salaries we are basing our assumptions on. Then there is a chart of cost, salary, benefits, and total for administrators, teachers, paraeducators, secretaries, 12 months, secretaries, 10 months, nurses, custodians, and unaffiliated. I'm going to read this because I'm supposed to be reading this into the record. So administrators, salary $125,400, benefits $21,000 for a total of $146,400. For teachers, $56,792 for salary, benefits $21,000 for a total of $77,792. Paraeducators, a salary of $23,500, benefits $18,500 for a total of $42,000. Secretary 12 months, a salary of $50,470, $21,000 in benefits for a total of $71,470. Secretary 10 months, $35,900 salary, $21,000 benefits, $56,900 for a total. For a nurse, salary of $59,454, benefits of $21,000 for a total of $80,454. Custodian, $55,665, benefits of $21,000 for a total of $76,665. Unaffiliated, $65,000, benefits of $21,000 for a total of $86,000. This table provides you with an overview of the cuts needed to get to a 3% increase over last year's operating budget, and currently at 3.78%. Scenario 1 is to get the budget to 3%. This would be 5 teachers, a loss of 5 teachers, or 9.5 paras, or a combination 5 positions, a combination of which would be administrator, teacher, secretary, nurse, custodian, or unaffiliated. That would be a reduction of $391,870. This next table provides you with an overview of a 2% increase over last year's budget. This is to get us to get the budget to 2%. This would be 11 teachers, or 20 paras, or a combination of positions, and it would be 12, combination of administrators, teachers, secretaries, nurses, custodian, or unaffiliated. That would be a reduction of $856,025. So in the first table, if the Board of Education chose not to add the specific 4 positions proposed by the superintendent, the total of 1 administrator, 2 teachers, and 1 custodian would be—
Melanie, may I ask you to hold on for a second, please? The Zoom functionality does let us know where that noise is coming from. So if you would like to maybe mute your phone instead of being called out, I would ask you to do that, please. Melanie, I'm sorry.
I think that's my dog. So I just muted me.
Go ahead, Melanie.
Okay, all right. So in that first table, and that was the information concerning getting the budget to 3%. If the Board of Education chose not to add the specific 4 positions proposed by the superintendent, the total of 1 administrator, 2 teachers, and 1 custodian would be $378,649. To get to 3%, another $13,221 would be needed, plus the still unidentified previous Board of Finance reduction of $30,000. Would require that a paraprofessional or equivalent salary also be eliminated. So reducing the budget from 3.78% to 3% would require a combination of 5 positions, as stated in the first table. The actual reductions of positions would be decided by the Board of Education and Administration, as these 4 proposed positions were considered critical to student achievement and the strategic plan. Potential impacts: limit course offerings at Bethel High School, put AP on rotational schedules, larger class size district-wide, cuts to electives, specials, or enrichment programs 6 through 12, eliminate core programs which make this community unique. Other options which would need to be considered: delaying capital projects for 1 year, increasing pay to play, consider fees for other extracurricular programs that currently do not have a cost, reduction in after-school clubs, activities, and programs, for example, theater and music, etc., and reducing or limiting student enrollment in non-mandatory programs. And that concludes the memos. Thank you.
All right, next up we have Megan Osamanti. I know I'm probably not saying that right. There you go. Megan. Megan.
Yes.
Hi, we're having a really hard time hearing you.
80 Grassy Plain Street. Can you hear me now?
Megan, I'm sorry, you're not coming in clearly.
Okay. You unmuted me?
Get closer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Better?
We don't have a good connection. I don't know why.
Okay. Does somebody else want to go and see if it's just me?
You know what, Megan, at the bottom where it says, do you see where it says group chat? On the right-hand side where the participants are, you would want to just type what your message is and want me to read it in for you. I'd be happy to do that since we're not able to hear you.
Okay.
Just trying to give you an option.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
Is that what would you want to try that?
Yeah, I use this all day though. I don't know why it's not working, but
Wait, now I just heard you a little bit better there.
should I even go for it or just type
Yeah,
it?
why don't you go for it? Is that okay, Bob?
Yeah, it was coming through pretty clearly at the end there.
Yeah.
It can lie. You'll let people in here. So I'm a teacher in another district, and I have 3 kids: a 12th grader, it's been a long day. A 7th grader and a 4th grader. They are receiving what I believe an amazing education, and I'd like the board to make sure that you keep any budget cuts or any considerations far away from the classroom. That has to be building maintenance, things like that, but it should stay away from the kids and the teachers.
Okay, Megan, I just want to make sure that I just heard what you said. You are in support of the school budget. That's where your main focus is?
Yeah.
Okay. And I'm sorry, can you just tell me what your address is?
80 Grassy Plain Street.
Grassy Plain?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
80.
All right. 80. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. So are you okay with that, Bob?
Yes, thank you.
So, we're going to go to Linda Salati. Linda,
Hi, thank you. I'm
Hi.
at 15 Eagle Rock Hill.
Eagle Rock Hill, thank you.
Thank you. I would just like to say I'm speaking not only as a parent, but as a member of the school community. I teach at Johnson School, and unfortunately, I totally understand how many people are struggling. But unfortunately, the reality is things are not going to be the same at Johnson School next year. We are going to be increasing by getting the third grade, and to expect to keep the current services the same and have such a huge increase in the population and the students who have needs coming to Johnson School next year, it is just impossible to be able to do that without getting another administrator. Our administrator right now is already overwhelmed with how much she has to do. The class sizes day to day, we have 28 kids in a classroom. One teacher who has a triad has up to almost 80 students. And we really do pride ourselves on knowing our students. Very difficult to do when you have 80 students. Even 50 or more is a lot. And we really do pride ourselves on helping every student get what he or she needs. Very hard to do, especially going in behind the 8 ball in the fall, because everyone's working really hard to try to help the kids now. But as you've heard many times already, it is not the same as being present with them in person. As it is, over the past 2 years specifically, we've seen such an increase in our school population, kids streaming in constantly throughout the school year into all of our schools, all the building that's going on in town, and the increase in how many school students are now attending in Bethel. Other towns around us are decreasing. We are not. We are the complete opposite. A lot of the population that's moving in, they have special needs from in a lot of areas. It concerns me greatly that it's going to be more than just those kids who are going to be struggling and will need the resources. And it concerns me because already with 28 students in a class, it's very hard for the teachers to meet the needs of every single student, though they work really hard to try. I just feel like we cannot afford to lose any positions, especially the ones that are being requested for next year. We really need those positions. Our job is to meet the needs of all of our students. My question is how? How do we do that if we reduce what we have? How do we do that if we don't get what we need to address those kids? I agree with the people who have already said, please keep it away from our kids. No matter what's going on in society, our kids need us. We worry about them daily. We want to make sure that we are there for what they need right out of the gate. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next we have Mary LaCory. Mary?
Okay.
Here you are.
Hi. I created this statement.
Mary, could you just give me your address, please?
Sorry, 58 Old Hollyville Road.
Thank you.
And I created this statement before COVID-19 kind of turned our lives upside down. So I've lived in Bethel for over 25 years, and I had 2 children graduate from the Bethel Public Schools. I became a teacher in 2006 and have taught in the district for almost 14 years. Bethel is a different, better community than it was 15 years ago when I started teaching. Diversity of all kinds makes us a more interesting and stronger community, but it also comes with challenges. Societal changes have led to less at-home supervision. Kids aren't spending time outside, and families and neighborhoods don't know each other the way they used to. Developments in technology can be beneficial in my classroom, but it also allows access to social media, violent video games, and inappropriate content on various media that are affecting all of our children. As a result, one of our most recent in-person faculty meeting was a workshop by the Women's Center to help us identify sexual harassment behavior by 9, 10, and 11-year-olds. The Developmental Asset Survey of 8th to 12th graders in the 2018-2019 survey is indicative of several concerning results, including students who have contemplated suicide and were anxious and depressed. One shocking statistic is that only 16% of our students feel valued by our community. This is our chance to change that. One of the other side effects of Bethel's growth is class size. When my kids were at Johnson, there were 22 students in their classes. I currently have 27 kids in both of my classes. I have to meet the needs of 54 individual students. These students may be high achievers who need enrichment, English language learners, students with IEPs and 504s, free and reduced lunch, etc. Bethel continues to implement a much more rigorous curriculum driven by Common Core standards, NGSS, etc., which continues to challenge our students and teachers. The results of the Developmental Asset Survey trickles down to 4th and 5th grade. Social, emotional, and behavioral issues have increased significantly. I have 5th graders who self-identify as having anxiety, depression, and self-harm concerns. I have participated in a 211 mobile crisis intervention with a student expressing suicidal ideations at 10 years old. My mid-year meeting this year was focused not on the students I was concerned about academically, but those with social emotional concerns that affect their academics. It's very difficult for teachers to develop the type of interpersonal relationships that are required in our new society when we have 27 students in the classroom. These increases in social emotional issues also lead to increases in classroom disruptions that affect the whole class. Sometimes I need to address an issue immediately in the hallway, impacting my instruction. Sometimes PPS staff members call in to provide intervention services. The last time we had this size enrollment, we had 15 more staff members in the district. We must have more teachers to reduce class size at Johnson. Our counselors, psychologists, and social workers are overwhelmed. Next year, there will be 3 grades at Johnson and 3 grades at BMS. BMS currently has 3 administrators and 4 secretaries. Adding a new assistant principal at Johnson is a must. Our school secretary, located in the main office, regularly has to deal with so many families, and she's going to have 750 families that she's going to be the face of Johnson School, and she needs to connect with those families. So we must have an assistant principal at Johnson. I implore you to follow the Board of Ed's recommendations and support the budget that is presented to ensure our future success as a district. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you.
Okay. Next, we have Matt Knickerbocker. Oh, wait. Are you? Nope.
Up here.
Oh, here we go. Sorry.
Thank you. Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity. I'm going to be brief. I have submitted a letter which you will find in the meeting materials that were posted online yesterday. I just want to make a couple of comments in support first of the town side of the budget, and I'm going to support both. I would like to see the budget that was previously voted on by the Board of Finance stay intact and go to the public hearing, which will occur over the next few weeks. And I well understand the fact that some people are going to struggle through this crisis financially. There's no doubt about that. And I am all in favor of doing as much as we can to help those individuals through the different assistance programs that have been offered at different levels of government. However, the town still has to pay its bills. We've gone through 3 years in a row of having the town side of the budget be defeated on the first try, and that has squeezed down farther and farther to the point where we have no place to cut, and we are seeing substantial increases in work. Just to give you a very brief idea, over the past 4 years in building permits, we've seen a 42% change, an increase. Land use applications, 60% increase. Health applications and inspections, 99% increase just since last year. It has almost doubled. Fire marshal permits, 21%. Police arrests up 44% in the last decade. Now, none of those departments have had additional full-time help in over a decade. They get by with getting some part-time help to do with a little bit of computer input, that can't happen any longer. Our town is growing and the workload is going up, and every one of those departments that I mentioned is statutorily required to do their work in a certain amount of time. They can't just say, we'll get to it when we get to it, and there's no such thing as doing more with less. These are all jobs that require hours of field time, inspections, hours of poring over engineering drawings and blueprints, and there's no way to cut corners, and they are up against the wall. Last summer, our building department was so far behind in inputting the building permits that they were issuing, because remember, they have to issue the permits within a certain amount of time. They were 3 months behind in doing that. And this is an untenable situation. Now, the other factor is history has shown that in a crisis like this, the town's expenses go up, not down. Already, we have spent thousands of dollars complying with the different requirements in responding to the COVID-19 crisis. We've had to shift staff around. We've had to buy new equipment to equip people to work remotely so we can comply with the governor's orders. So at this point in time, all of our staff is working full time because none of the other things that they do have gone away. I got an email the other day from a resident who said, well, now that everything is shut down, how much of a tax decrease am I going to get? The fact is, we are seeing the same volume, if not more, already, and there's already pent-up demand, especially in the building trades and in land use, that we're going to see as soon as the restrictions start to be lifted. There is no savings from that, and we will have higher expenses next year. The health department, as just one example, has spent hundreds and hundreds of extra hours and have brought in extra people to respond to this. We've put in the COVID crisis line. She's had to hire part-time people to help answer phones. And Laura herself has been working 7 days a week for the last 6 weeks as this thing started, doing inspections. And keep in mind, all the normal stuff, as I've said, still goes on. She still has to respond to complaints of dirty apartments, which is a health department issue. She still has to inspect restaurants. None of that goes away. So I am asking this Board of Finance to please go forward with the well-crafted budget that you put together many weeks ago. It was a tight budget. It had no frills. There's no turf fields. There's no extras. It just covers the bill. And that bill includes the debt load for fixing our schools, the utility bills, the payroll for our police department to keep people safe. Those are the things that are in this budget. As I've said many times, our budget is not a political document. It is a practical document. It is what we need to pay the bills and provide the services that every one of you on this call expects to have from your town. Now, let me say a little bit about the school budget. I am in full support of that budget as well, because I know from what my own grandchildren are going through with distance learning, there will be many, many more kids who are going to need extra help. Hopefully this summer, we can put together, Dr. Carver can put together a summer school program that can help the kids who need extra help. And then moving back in the fall, there will be many more catch-up days that our teachers are going to have to do. So I implore you, let's focus on the tax relief that can be offered, the monetary relief that is offered to help taxpayers, but don't gut the town's ability to provide the services that we need. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Right, so we have C. Schaefer. Just give me your name and address.
Kathy Schaefer, 53 Hidden Brook Trail.
I'm sorry, Hidden what?
Hidden Brook.
Hidden Brook Trail. Okay, thank you.
I also need to say that I am not speaking as a member of the Board of Education, but as a member of the Bethel community and also as an educator. I would like to ask that no cuts be made to the Board of Education budget. because I'm seeing things now as an educator. I mean, under normal circumstances, I would not want any cuts to this budget because we have additional needs that we identified before COVID-19 was an issue. But now I'm seeing with my own students, they're going to be delayed and they are going to need not just extra academic intervention when they get back in September, but also emotional support and a lot of just extra community effort. And you can't do that with less staff. So I feel that the budget we put in place before was addressing a lot of the increased needs and a lot of the increased population needs that we already had, but this just compounds it. This terrible thing that we're all going through, and the kids are traumatized and they're feeling it, and they're going to need us a lot when we get back to school in September. So I guess what I really want to highlight is that I know that people are struggling financially. I definitely understand that, and my heart really goes out to everybody. But there is a human cost. There is a cost to our children and our community if we don't support them in the way that they need to be supported. And you don't want to tie the hands of the teachers and the administrators and all the paraprofessionals and people that work with our kids. You don't want to tie their hands so that they can't provide the services that the kids need. And the other thing I'd like to say is, you know, that old expression, you know, penny wise and pound foolish. If you cut now, the end result will be something that will continue on for not just next year. It's harder and harder to catch it. The earlier you catch it, the easier it is to mitigate it. And I think that we would be giving our students and our families and our community as a whole a big disservice to cut this budget beyond what it is right now. This is a budget that would serve the needs of our kids, and it really can't have any more cuts without having a negative effect on our kids. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next we have Jen Lawler.
Thank you. I'm finished.
Can you guys hear me? I'm sorry, I just want to make sure I'm doing it right.
Hi, Jen. Yes.
Can you hear me, Dion?
Yes.
Okay. Jen Lawler, 22 Bethpage Drive.
Jen, do you have your TV on?
I do not. I'm actually outside. It's not me.
Okay. I'm sorry, would you repeat your address?
Sure, 22 Bethpage Drive.
Thank you.
So I'm not going to spend a lot of time repeating what's already been said. I concur with a lot of it. I want to point out a few things as the Board of Finance goes into their meeting to decide where the cuts may or may not come from, should they go down that road. I am vehemently against any cuts that make the class size go up. Being a parent in this town across the last 40 years, I have seen it go up, 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 up. And I also see how much it affects children with the bigger class sizes, as well as the teachers. So I really hope that that's an area that can be left alone. And I also just wanted to point out that I think it should be discussed that we give this as much time as possible. I don't think that we should be pressuring our Board of Finance to kind of build Rome in a day here with one meeting. That's an awful lot to decide. I don't know if that's already been discussed, that there'll be several meetings. It may very well have been, but I think this needs a pause. It needs time. Everybody is exhausted. Everybody is upside down emotionally, socially. We've got all sorts of similar and different stressors going on. And I don't think it would be good for anybody to rush into a decision. And I also had told Matt Knickerbocker directly today, I would like to see as much effort given as possible to have enough time in place so that residents have the right to vote. I do not think that this should be decided upon without there being a really, really, really serious reason to have to go faster if it means that residents won't get the opportunity to vote. And yeah, I think that's it. I'm very concerned about the class sizes though. I definitely think, and I'm sorry, one more thing. Mrs. Salerno is absolutely going to need help at Johnson School. That is not, I can tell you just from living it. She's got a full load and we have an entire school grade coming into her building. She is absolutely going to need help. I don't pretend to know the answers on finding the funding in an easy way, but that's a definite, she's going to need some help. So that'll do it.
Thank you.
Okay, Nicole Cruz.
Hi.
Nicole.
Hi, I'm
Nicole, I need for you to give me your address, please.
Sure. My address is 144 Rockwell Road.
Thank you.
And I'm here just as a member of the community and a mom with two parents in Bethel Schools, so middle schooler and at Berry School. We moved here to Bethel just 4 years ago. And one of the main reasons why we came to Bethel was because of the education system and the schools here. And while I am extremely sympathetic to the town's increase in costs due to COVID, we're affected with it here. My husband is not working. I'm extremely sympathetic to that, but in the same sense, my children here need the aid at the schools. Matt Knickerbocker said it best when he said that this town is growing, and it is growing. There are tons of younger families with children moving into this town. So the schools are becoming more populated and the teachers are having larger class sizes, and there are a lot more children, particularly in the younger schools, that I noticed require one-on-one paras and have IEPs and 504s, and we need the help, and our budget can't take the cuts because then we can't afford the appropriate staff for these students who need these special services. And we're constantly losing really good teachers to neighboring communities who can afford to pay their teachers what they deserve. So just very quickly, in support of leaving our budget or the school budget alone, as is at the very least, and keeping it kind of status quo. Our kids need it. Bethel schools already do so much with so little, and forcing them to take any additional cuts really puts our kids' education at jeopardy here, and I don't think it's fair.
Okay, thank you, Nicole.
Thank you, Nicole, to you and your son.
All right, so next we have Karen Foster. There we go. Karen?
All right, can you hear me now?
Yes. Karen, what's your address?
Okay. My address is 9 Burnham Wood Road. I heard an earlier comment, I think it was in one of the letters, about potentially cutting theater and music to make up for other areas. I just want to speak out against that, because every kid in high school needs to find their place. And for a lot of kids, music and theater is their place. So anyway, Bethel just won an award, and you may have seen it on Facebook. We were voted one of the 754 best communities for music education in the country. And that's a pretty big deal. These are for communities where recognizes outstanding efforts by teachers, administrators, parents, students, community leaders who have made music education part of a well-rounded education. And I just want to make sure that we can continue to live up to that. Music education, the theater program is all very important to the kids, and it deserves as much attention as other areas. I think that the music department is doing an excellent job with distance learning. You may have seen the virtual choir concert that was posted by Ms. Manolo. It was on several of the Facebook groups. If you haven't seen it, go to the Bethel Music Department page and look that up. It was amazing. The music education is continuing. The kids are working. I just want to speak out for keeping that and recognizing how important that is, and that Bethel has been given several awards over the years for their music education. I'd like to keep that standard up. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Karen. Okay, next we have Rachel Karam.
Oh boy.
Hi, Rachel.
Hello.
Hi. So, Rachel, is your last name Karam, C-A-R-A-M?
Yes.
Okay, and your address?
149 Old Hollyville Road.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. I just want to say that I'm speaking not only as the secretary of Johnson School, but also as a mother of 2 children in the Bethel Public Schools. I can tell you that we have some of the best teachers and administrators, and I would love to see the education budget stay as is.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, and then next we have Irene Drake.
Hi, good evening, everybody. I want to thank the Board of Finance for the opportunity to speak virtually tonight.
Irene,
Yes.
Irene, I'm sorry, your address.
Oh, I'm sorry. My address is 5 Pleasant Rise.
Pleasant Rise. Okay, thank you.
No problem. So I am a 3rd grade teacher at Rockwell, but I am speaking tonight as a parent. My daughter is currently a 4th grade student at Johnson School with an extremely large class size. And research has shown that smaller class sizes is optimal for the high quality student learning, both academic and social emotional, that Bethel is used to and our children deserve. This cannot happen with any cuts to this budget. The budget that was currently set when I went to the Board of Finance meeting way back before COVID-19, we might be able to do things then. We cannot do it with further cuts. I urge you to think as elected officials, not on the short term, but about the long-term negative effects cuts would have on our current educational system, especially given our current situation. I sympathize with COVID-19 situations. I have friends and family who have suffered, so I am not without knowledge of that. However, we know that our students who will be returning to school whenever the governor tells us we can come back, will have significant gaps in their learning. Distance learning does not replace the teacher, does not replace the classroom. These students that didn't normally require remediation will now require remediation that we've never had to do before. So I just urge you to really keep the budget as it is and send it forward. And again, thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you.
Okay, next we have Jen Ackerman. Hi, Jen.
Hi, everyone. Jen Ackerman, 4 Walnut Hill Road.
Thank you.
If my Wi-Fi is wonky, I need to know right away. Just give me the hi sign, I'll dart out.
Okay.
I really just am concerned about maintaining all the proposed positions that we have in the budget, because really our needs have not changed. I understand we are in a health crisis right now. Many homes have been impacted financially. Mine has as well. But the school needs and our changing demographics have not changed.
Oh, you cut out, Jen. Jen, you've cut out.
We are. Can you hear me?
You're back.
You're back.
Sorry, that would figure.
There you go. There you go.
Okay. Hi. Sorry. Just basically reprioritizing our already scarce resources will not support our already overstretched teaching staff. I think we have a moral and educational obligation to adjust to our new rapidly changing demographics, or, all students will be negatively impacted. It's not really a choice. We've started out with a negative teaching balance here. We have a lot of unstaffed positions that we really need to get back up and running. We've been waiting. Also, I just like to say, our goal is to highly educate our children and keep our community services running. We are already squeezed. And I just basically ask
Jen, we've lost you again. Oh, we just lost her. She muted herself.
Deanna, how are you going to record Jen's ask? I think.
Well, I have that she asked to maintain the budget and that the school needs have not changed. All right, next we have Nick. I don't have a last name for Nick.
Hey, Deanne.
Hey, Nick.
Nick Hoffman, 163 Plum Trees Road. And I am speaking as a town busybody, not in my capacity as a Board of Ed member, Charter Revision Commission member. And I support the budget as stated. I think we risk a lot in terms of the future of our community by overreacting in this moment. I think throughout the budget deliberation process, I've heard the term fiduciary responsibility come up. And now it's really to test that. Unfortunately, as we presently sit, 7 people bear the weight of the future of our community. And I think fiduciary responsibility is at the core of what should be your decision-making process. And fiduciary responsibility is outlined by a simple measure, and the measure is the reasonable person standard, and it's based on 3 duties. The duty of loyalty, which essentially means members put the interests of the town above their own. They're not there as advocates or members of a political party, members of a PTA or a breakfast or lunch club. They're there to best serve the collective whole. The duty of care, that members come as informed advocates for the town. They understand our finances. They understand the different components we can leverage to the benefit of our community at this moment. And obedience. The members are obedient to the collective needs of our community. And ultimately, that's what this is about. Every other government entity is looking at how do we stem off this epidemic, this crisis that we're facing that we've never been tested in. Since this has happened, there's a quote that Benjamin Franklin spoke that's just been resonating in my ear, and it's failure to prepare is preparing to fail. And I feel by cutting this budget is preparing to fail. We have 2 schools under construction that are going to be opened up this fall. So we're going to cut our budget to our schools and potentially lay off teachers. How will our bonding rating agencies look at the leadership of our town that we're going to open up 2 brand new schools with a rising student population and cut our teaching staff? Our bond rating will be cut. We'll see astronomical rates where we should be getting the best rates we possibly can get rise for neglect. Similarly, if we look at our staffing for our police department, we're understaffed by the ratios established by the FBI and by the communities within our state that are similar to us. Last year, the state of Connecticut passed a bill for post-traumatic stress for first responders. It's not news that the Bethel Police Department has been dealing with a lot over the last 12 months. And to be honest, the 5 years previous to that. Trauma doesn't leave a body, it stays there until it's triggered again and makes somebody incapable of doing the responsibilities. So knowing that and knowing what our police officers have been through, we're not even giving them the protection to ask for the help they need. That's negligence. It's negligence. So as we move forward, I too think this should be vetted in the traditional way. I think we should wait until we can put this to ballot vote. I think we need to protect the budget as is and protect the momentum that Bethel has created over the last 15 years. We're a completely different community. One of the trends we've been seeing within the schools as well is an in-migration from Westchester County. Do you think the people that are sitting in their townhomes that are going on 6 or 7 weeks of quarantine aren't going to be looking for a nice rural community in Connecticut to move to? If we make these cuts, we collapse our real estate budget. 70 to 70.5% of our grand list is real estate, individual homeowners. And I get the suffering. I've been unemployed since last August. This is something my family's been dealing with for over a half of a year now. 2 years ago, we invested in a brand new house because we love this town. It's where my wife grew up, her mom before her. It increased our tax significantly. We got hit by the salt pipe, but it doesn't matter. This is our community. We're invested here. And we need to circle our wagons, and we need to vote as individuals, and we need to support our community. That's what I have to share. Thanks.
Thanks, Nick.
Thank you, Nick. And Dion, just a moment before the next speaker, Nick mentioned something that I think was talked about by 2 earlier speakers, and that is the waiting beyond the May 15th deadline that this board has been given. I believe that is a valid question. I would just ask people to pursue that with the Board of Selectmen, but that's not the Board of Finance's jurisdiction. We kind of have been given a charge to do something by a certain date. We can't argue whether or not that date is appropriate. We kind of have to be the line soldier and get it done. So I would just encourage folks, if they have a genuine concern, and I understand that genuine concern. I don't think anybody on this Board of Finance is taking lightly the added responsibility here. So it is a very serious responsibility. It is a genuine and legitimate concern. I would just encourage folks to take it up with the Board of Selectmen. Now, Matt, I see Matt and Paul, and my guess is Rich is here somewhere as well. Look, I know they'll welcome that debate. So it's important. I don't want to short shrift it here. It's just unfortunate. The Board of Finance is not we don't have the authority to make the change. But thank you very much, because those are, again, it's a very important point, and I think it does need to be fully vetted if folks have a genuine concern about it. I'm sorry, Dion, go ahead.
No, and Bob, I just want to, I also want to say something. Just in the group chat, there was a question of whether the people participating in this was going to be able to vote. This is just a time for public comments. There will be no vote by the public. This is a regular Board of Finance meeting, and this is your opportunity to make public comments in this meeting. Most of them, seems like all of them, are going to be about the budget, but there will be no vote by the public during this meeting. All right, then we have Dawn. Hi, Dawn.
Hi, guys. Can you hear me?
Hi, Dawn. How are you?
Good.
Dawn, what's your address?
It's 3 Old Field Drive.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I'm going to keep this short. Thank you, everyone. I just want to reiterate what everyone else is saying. I do have a student in the high school, and I do believe that our class sizes are way too big. There are a lot of children with social emotional issues before this happened, and it's going to be really hard when the kids get back. So I would like to just say that I am in support of the education budget, and please do not make any cuts. Thank you.
Thank you, Don.
Okay, then we have, it says iPad 6.
Hi there. Sorry about that. Melissa Corona here from 14 Codfish Hill Road Extension.
Melissa, will you spell your last name?
It's Corona. It's kind of hard to miss it. It's Corona.
And I'm sorry, you said Cod Hill Fish Road?
14 Codfish Hill Road Extension.
Oh my goodness. Thank you so much.
Oh, yes. It's a fun last name right now. I would just like to, first of all, bravo, Nick. That was absolutely spot on. I'm also not only a parent of a 10 and a 12-year-old in the school systems. I grew up here. I am a lifelong resident of this town. I'm also a business owner of 25 years. I chose to open up my business here because I wanted to give back to my town. And yes, there's nothing worse than a hardship of everything that we're going through. Financially speaking, it's hard for the kids. It's hard watching this happen. And all I can ask is, yes, I was going to say pretty much Nick summed up what everything that I just hope that we can do moving forward. I'd like to see the vote waited on, obviously, and really hope moving forward that we can do what is right for this town, because also as a business owner, I watch everything struggle. And, it's hard to watch everyone moving into this town that the low income housing, all this stuff affects us. And watching the school system suffer like this is very hard. So, I hope we can make it work. I hope we push the vote off, and I hope that everything works out for our children. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, anybody else would like to make any public comments?
Originally, I wanted to carry the brick across the wall of this fireplace, but loose bricks changed my mind.
Okay, we have one more here. It's a phone number. I'm going to unmute you. 914. Hi.
It's Allison Stowell. Hi.
Allison. Hi. How are you?
How are you? Good. 88 Taylor Road.
Okay.
And I just want to reiterate a lot of what's already been said tonight. And I get it. I'm talking to you tonight as someone who's not just a parent, but also unemployed as a result of all this. But my commitment to my kids and the other kids in the community doesn't change just because of that. And so I just wanted to say that I'd really love to see this budget left as is, so we can work toward meeting all the challenges that have already been discussed tonight for our growing district. Thank you. And thank you guys for the opportunity for us to all speak tonight.
All right. So we have, thanks, Allison. Okay, next we have Sergio's iPhone. Sergio?
Yes, can you hear me?
Hi, yes.
Hi, how are you? My name is Hugo Cruz. I live at 35 Spring Hill Lane.
Will you spell your last name?
Sure, it's Hugo, Hugo, Cruz, Cruz.
Okay, thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Hope everyone's staying safe. Just to agree, I would like to keep the school budget as the same, and if we can balance it that way, that would be magnificent. Just to keep it short. Thank you very much, and have a good night.
Thank you. Okay, we have Rob Jackson.
Hello, this is Rob Jackson, 26 Deepwood Drive. Like to support the school budget. I think it's good the way it is. I agree that I think this should be sent to a vote. We got to hit the pause button and allow the townspeople to decide on this budget. And although I know there's time constraints to get the budget passed, I think that townspeople need to decide this budget. I don't know if there's a way to hear from the Board of Finance tonight at all on some of their opinions on how we can reduce the budget, whether it's to put off paving for a year, put off things like expansion of the dog park, additional police, or what areas they think we might be able to trim the budget. And I know it's needed areas, but I just think that there's probably other areas where we might be able to reduce this some. And I know the governor's pushing for us to do this, but I tend not to listen to him very much. Thank you.
And Rob, to be responsive to your question regarding whether or not there will be any suggestions for cuts, depending on how long this goes, I do think we will be having some of those discussions in a little while.
Thank you.
We'll follow the agenda. We've got a couple of administrative things to do, but then we'll get to that point.
Okay. I have Hunt D with hand raised, but for some reason they're above Rob Jackson. So I don't know if I accidentally skipped you. Hunt D, did you want to make a comment?
Yes, please. You did skip me. That's okay though. No big deal.
I'm so sorry.
That's all right.
Will you give me your name
Hugo's
and
my
address?
neighbor. So hey, Hugo, I've only been able to see you 6 feet. So my name is David Hunt, 32 Spring Hill Lane.
Okay.
I've been a lifelong resident. I'm a teacher here in town. I have 2 kids in the system. I would hate to see the progress we've made, even since I was a child, go down. I've spent my whole life here trying to make and help this place be the best it can be. So I'm voting in favor of both budgets. I think it's important that we support the people in town here, and that's my statement.
Okay. Thank you so much. All right. Is there anybody else that would like to make a comment? All right, Bob, I don't have anybody else with their hand raised.
Okay. We've been on for about an hour and 30 minutes. If we were doing this in person right about now, we'd take a 5-minute break. How do folks, I've got a screen in front of me with a bunch of faces. To the extent people are okay with a 5-minute break, nod. Right?
I'm good either way.
Looks like most people are nodding. Let's take a 5-minute break.
How you raise your hand?
Oh, Bob Legnard, are you wanting to raise your hand?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I tell you what, I hear you. So why don't you go ahead and make your comments, sir?
You can hear me.
Yes.
I'm in favor of moving this forward and getting a budget in place so that when we come out of this,
Fuck you.
what we're in right now, that we could move forward with the town the way we need to move forward. If we put it off, we put it off. It's like kicking the can down the road. They've identified things that are a problem. They've identified things that need to be done. We know what we need to run schools. We know what we need to pave roads. And I think it'd be irresponsible not to have a budget in place when we come out of this thing and go forward. Thank you.
Okay. And Mr. Legnard, what's your address?
11 Evergreen Drive, Bethel, Connecticut.
Thank you, sir.
I spent a lot of time here today.
Yeah. Okay. With that said, is there anybody else that wants to make a comment? Okay.
All right, my computer's got us at 8:33. Let's see if we can be back here at 8:38.
Okay.
5-minute recess.
Okay.
Thank you.
I don't have music and I'm not going to sing for you.
So D,
Yes.
if I hit leave meeting, does that mean, is that what I hit? Or do I just walk away from my screen?
Why don't you just walk away from your screen? This is unprecedented. I don't know.
You can stop video. Don't leave the meeting. Then you have to go get back in.
Then you'll have to log back on.
Oh, okay.
Cindy, just hit your video off
Yes.
on the bottom, just like you do your mute your mic, just turn off your video too.
Whatever you do, don't take your camera with you.
There we go.
That's it. Okay.
Oh, but I can still hear you. So
Oh.
mute
Well,
yourself.
then I'll mute me too.
Yeah, don't embarrass yourself. If we can, okay.
Dion, I've got 8:38. You want to just give people another minute or two?
Nope. I mean, if you want to go, let's go. I would like to say, if we are able to see any background noise where it might be coming from. So there are some of you that I am muting, and I'm muting you just because we can hear you. So if you are muted, please stay that way. Don't unmute yourself.
I see Brian. I see Robert. Just doing a check of the Board of Finance. I see Dee, Cynthia. I don't see Nick or Wendy.
Who farted?
He's back.
Who farted?
Okay, let's see.
Cut that guy out.
Did you fart? You farted, didn't you?
Question.
We have adults here, please. Thank you.
Someone farted.
You imagine that guy can vote?
I see the name now. Okay, Wendy, are you back?
Wendy is.
Okay. All right, let's,
So am I right?
yeah, we hear you. Dion, you've got all the Board of Finance members unmuted? No, I
I
see.
am trying my best right now. Give me just 1 second.
Looks like Nick is in now.
Let me see. Who am I missing?
Cynthia's still muted.
Okay, give me just 1 second.
He is still muted.
Okay, I'm working on it, guys.
Thank you.
Uh,
Great job for the first time through. You're doing a great job for the nth time.
it is a little crazy, but it's all good. Wait, is that, and then let's unmute. Okay. So let's see here. Do I have everybody now?
Yep, looks like we got everyone. Okay. Going down the agenda, the next item is correspondence.
Oh, you know what? I'm sorry. I don't mean to interrupt you. I apologize. I need to unmute Bob Kozlowski. There he is. There we go. Hey, Bob.
Hi.
Okay, I think we're good now. Okay, sorry about that, Bob.
The next agenda item is correspondence. Do we have additional correspondence? No.
No.
Okay, moving on to the next agenda item, consideration of approval of regular meeting minutes from March 10th. Those were distributed. Give folks just a minute to go through those. Entertain a motion to accept the minutes as submitted.
Second.
Discussion. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Okay. Comptroller's report. Again, I think everybody had the comptroller's report, or the comptroller's report was attached to the minute to the meeting invite. So Bob, we'll turn it over to you for the comptroller's report.
Okay, just real quickly, so we can move on to the rest of the agenda. Looking at the report, there's a few items I wanted to bring up. Account 405, paramedic, which is in the Intergovernmental Services Department. The paramedic, you'll see a large number in that. The dollars haven't been transferred over to the paramedic account at this point. It will be before the end of the year. We always do that towards the end of the year. In account 290, emergency management, just like the last one, I mentioned it, the cost of the tower is in there, so the office expense is overstated, or we overspent on that, but that's the tower on Spring Hill. And it's an agreement we had worked up after the budget was prepared last year, so we're going to overrun that particular item. In account 200, social services, you'll see that the 20,000 so far has not been distributed to the different organizations. That too, at the end of the year, is normally done. So within the next month or so, we'll start to sit down with social service director and decide how the 20,000 will be distributed. And then the probate court, just like I mentioned the last couple of months, we're part of 4 different towns: Bethel, Newtown, Reading, and Richfield. And so you'll see an not overpayment, but additional expenses in there, but we bill out at the end of the year, and we're in line with the numbers that we should have by the end of the year. Other than that, all the other accounts pretty much seem to be in order. So.
Thank you.
Any questions for Bob?
I have a question. Oh,
You're good. Keep talking.
I just want to, I would just, if you don't want to raise your hand, if you will at least just say, Wendy has a question, just state your name, just so that I know who's talking. Okay.
Okay. So I can speak now?
Yes. I've never had Wendy ask me that before.
Wow.
Permission before.
That's funny.
All right. So Bob, do you have an approximate idea, any kind of feeling for where we're going to end the year? I know it's a little early.
Yeah, it's still early. I don't think we're going to be far off from what we had in the last couple of years. But since you brought that up, I do have, and it relates to what we're going to talk about later on, savings and additional costs or revenue loss because of COVID-19. Going through some of the departments and asking the department heads for their input. In the highway department, we're looking at probably numbers like 83,654 in savings. Park and Rec, 63,700. The senior center, $6,000. That totals up to about $153,400. But if you look at the other side, the lost revenue or the additional costs in highway, which also includes the transfer station, we're not receiving any revenue for the garbage that we're collecting at this point. We're just paying to for the residents that drop off their garbage, we're paying to dispose of it. And that cost is about $3,000 a month. So that's about $12,000. In Park and Rec, part of the $63,000 savings was the before and after school program. We're going to lose revenue to the extent of about $82,000. So in that department alone, because they have to buy, they're the focal point right now for all the supplies that we're buying for the COVID-19. So far, they've bought about $3,600 in supplies, masks, wipes, and that sort of item. The senior center, because they're not running the programs and saving $6,000, but what they're losing in revenue is about $12,850. And then in the town clerk's department, because we're going to have increased costs for the primary ballots, they all have to be mailed out to the registered voters. There's going to be about a $7,300 cost there. And emergency management right now, someone mentioned before, I think it was Matt, mentioned about the laptops that we have to purchase. They were $6,300. The PPE was $3,700. The Zoom that we're on right now, $132. That's something we never had before. So that totals up to $10,175 for a grand total of $127,500. And when you compare that with the savings from the other departments I spoke about before, the net savings at this point is about $26,000, $25,854. So maybe that answers your question.
Dion,
That it
it's
does.
Brian. Oh, sorry.
No, I'm done.
Oh, can I ask Bob a question?
Go ahead.
Bob, some of those COVID-19 costs, though, are going to be reimbursed most likely through the federal government, correct?
Yeah, they probably will. I think right now they're looking at either 70 or 80% reimbursement. But that's not going to come in right away. It's probably going to be a good year based on our prior experience with FEMA and the federal government.
And
But you're right. I mean, we're going to get some reimbursement.
And can I just
But
ask one
but they're not
question
going
on,
to, they won't reimburse us for the lost revenue on like the park and rec programs,
Right.
which is substantial.
when I looked at utilities,
Yep.
it looks like we spend about, on average, 189,000 a month on utilities. And when I kind of looked over it, it looked like we'd have probably a little over $100,000 in savings in the utility account. Do you agree with that? And
We're probably in that
that's
ballpark. Some of it may have to get allocated over to the utility department, water and sewer. We do those adjustments towards the end of the year, but we'll probably have a surplus in the utility department. Maybe not
Okay.
100, but we'll have something.
All right, thank you.
Yep.
Hey, Bob,
Yep.
I just want to make a comment to Brian's question. The FEMA reimbursement rate is 75%, but we have yet to be told what exactly is covered. And those costs typically don't come in for about sometimes up to a year. So just wanted to make you aware of that.
Bob, I'm curious as to how the fourth quarter, I know it's early, right? The fourth quarter revenue collections have been tracking. Do you have any insight into what that looks like?
I know, talking to Ann, the tax collector, the money was coming in. They're pretty busy with the Dropbox, and in fact, so much so that they're using People's Bank, which we normally use in the first quarter for the Dropbox. So she's sending down deposits for People's to process for us. 54% of our money comes in on escrowed accounts. We've already received that for the fourth quarter. 46% is non-escrowed accounts. And that money seems to be coming in at this point. We won't know for another week or two, which is almost the end of April, how much we'll actually wind up collecting of that 46%. But her feeling is it's going to be substantial. I don't think we're going to have a major shortfall.
So trending more or less as we would normally see, kind of pre.
I think so at this point. Yep. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Any more questions for Bob?
Oh,
like to
like on the highway?
Go to Wendy. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Do we have any, because it was such a mild winter, is there any money left there? Salt, sand, overtime?
There was some, Wendy, but what he was going to do with that, and that's included in my number here, what he was going to do is divert that within the same department to the catch basins. We have to do it because of the state requirement to clean the basins every 2 or 3 years, all of them. So that was going to be done, but because you need 2 people in a truck and they're only driving one at a time, that's put off until this COVID-19 virus is basically gone. So we're going to save $79,000 in that, which represents the amount of money we saved on the sand and the salt. But we're going to have to use that again in the first quarter next year to clean those basins. They have to get cleaned.
Okay.
Cynthia has a question.
Thanks.
Yep.
Okay. Bob, so I saw the memo that went out asking the various departments to report on any cost savings they could cite. And you just said a few, but the ones that I saw in your memo didn't seem to have any. And I was just wondering if what we've just talked about is all that there was in terms of savings.
Yeah, I mean, these were all the departments that got back to me. I got a final number probably around 5:30 this afternoon, which I incorporated into the schedule. But it's all the departments that responded.
Right, but even so, you just pointed out the highway department and the utilities, which are, they weren't included as a response. And I'm just saying, are there anywhere that you've computed not from the departments, but just from you knowing, are there any savings that you think we're going to come in like under as far as costs?
No, not at this point. No, I didn't come up with anything.
Okay.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Bob in this segment of the agenda?
Bob, are we going to come back to savings when we talk later?
I've got it here.
Yeah. Well, let's
Yeah.
do the. All right, good.
Mile?
Good, man.
My only question would be, so are we expecting really not to have any money left over at the end of the year that would be transferred into the general fund?
The fund balance?
No
No,
savings?
I think, like we had last year, 300,000-400,000. We may not have that type of a number at this point, but we will have some money going into the fund balance.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
Bob, I take it. Oh, I'm sorry, Nick. Were you going to say something?
No, I'm good.
Trying to pay attention to the functionality of Zoom. It kind of gives the box of squares. It looks like someone's trying to talk. So sorry, Nick. I thought you were trying to talk. Bob, so I guess then what you're saying is the 300,000 or so that will be going into the general fund will be primarily not from savings, but rather from our over our budgeting rate.
Yeah, I think you can say that, like we had last year. Mhm.
I have a question and follow up on that, Bob. Historically, where are we seeing that bulk of that money come from? You talked about $26,000 worth of savings. I guess that was largely Parks and Rec. Where do we see the additional funds coming from?
Well, it could be from employee benefits because we have the contracted services. The unions have agreed to move to the partnership plan, so there are some savings when we move to different medical plans, and that would be the bulk of it really when it comes in. You may have some money coming from utilities, like Brian had mentioned before. So it'll be a couple of different areas.
Okay.
Okay, I guess kind of since we've recently adopted the practice of accepting as submitted the comptroller's report, I guess entertain a motion to accept the comptroller's report as submitted.
So moved.
I'll second.
Any discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Okay, so just so I can make sure, that motion was made by Bob and Frida. It was seconded by Robert Palmer.
I think it was Robert Palmer made the motion.
And Wendy seconded it.
Wendy
Aye.
seconded.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm glad I asked.
All right.
Thanks.
Now we come to the last agenda item, which is consideration of the budget for purposes of the public hearing. My guess is that the vast majority of the 115 participants on the call are most interested in this part of the evening. What might be helpful is to give a brief kind of summary of how we got here, where we are, and where we go from here, to kind of put this a little bit in context. Remember that we started this budget process February 10th. Had the department heads begin presenting their requests to joint meetings of the Board of Selectmen and the Board of Finance. The boards and the department heads met for several nights over the next month. Then on March 10th, the Board of Finance voted 6-1 to send a proposal to the public hearing for the purpose of getting public input before final deliberation on a budget. That budget suggested an increase in spending of 3.495%, increase in the mill rate of 2.39%. That's the budget I believe most folks were describing as the current budget offering. That, again, that budget was teed up to go to public hearing on March 23rd. And then coronavirus and COVID-19 changed the whole world, right? And everything was kind of stopped and changes began. We first had a postponement in the dates. Then we had some social distancing requirements, which made town meeting form of government unworkable. Governor Lamont executed Executive Order 7, capital I, and that's the one that provides the Board of Selectmen the power to authorize the Board of Finance to determine a budget without an annual town meeting and without a referendum. On Tuesday, April 7th, pursuant to that Executive Order 7, capital I, the Board of Selectmen passed a resolution authorizing the Board of Finance to determine the fiscal year 2020-2021 budget year, consistent with another executive order that said we have to have a virtual public hearing. Now, the Board of Selectmen has directed the Board of Finance to set this budget by May 15th. So that's where we are. That's what we are, how we've come to this point in the process. From here, where do we go? Well, from here, the Board of Finance will again think about what budget proposal will be sent to now a virtual public hearing. Dates are somewhat dynamic, but at this point, we're thinking that a virtual public hearing will take place on Tuesday, May 12th, and then on Friday, May 15th, the last day available to us, we would have a Board of Finance special meeting to determine the budget. That's where we go from here. I guess how I would start tonight's discussion among the Board of Finance is to ask the Board of Finance individually whether anybody believes, based on all the input that we got prior to tonight, and whether or not that budget that we adopted on the 10th, again reflecting the 3.495% increase in spending and the 2.39% increase in the mill rate, whether that budget is something we want to stay with for purposes of going to the virtual public hearing on May 12th. So I'm just going to pick people out based on where they are looking in the squares that I have. And I would ask you to answer that question with a kind of a simple no, yes. And to the extent that you feel you need to add more, I'd ask you to be brief in the asking or in the adding of more. So on my screen, Wendy, you're in the number 1 position. How would you answer the question? Do you feel that that budget that we adopted March 10th, seemingly a lifetime ago, is something that we'd want to bring to the public hearing on Tuesday, May 12th?
In my heart, I would say yes, but in the reality, I'm going to have to say no. I think that we need to take another look at it.
Brian, you're in the number 2 position on my screen.
I'm going to say no, we should not bring that budget forward.
Robert Palmer.
I think that where we were when we developed that budget, the thought process that we into it, I fully supported it at the time. But with the economic situation as it is today and where we think it's going to be for the next oncoming couple quarters, it's not going to be a rapid recovery in my mind. It's going to be a slow recovery. And I think we'd be rather tone deaf to say we should go ahead without any modifications to the current budget. I think that we have a lot of hurting residents in Bethel, and I think that they're looking to us to take a leadership stand and making some additional cuts to where we are.
Thank you. Nick, you're in the next position.
Robert said it perfectly. Our neighbors are struggling, and I would definitely want to look at it again. Thank you.
D.
I think that the budget that was proposed best reflects what our town needs and still needs. Those needs haven't changed, and I'd like us to keep that in mind as we continue to talk about the budget. But I do think, given the uncertainty and the anxiety that's going on, for our friends and neighbors and ourselves, I think we owe it to ourselves to take a look at the budget again and see if there are places that we can take some things out that will not drastically reduce our quality of life in Bethel.
Yeah, I think that just as our lives were different before COVID-19, our lives were different when we, cooked up that budget. And I think that it would be irresponsible not to look at it and to realize, and I don't know how far out people are thinking, but I'm of the opinion that this is not going to, that this is a whole cultural shift in our country, in our world. This is not going to be like holding on to everything that we know. So we have to get like into a space where we're not, we have to use a different paradigm when we're doing this. I feel strongly about that. So thanks.
I would have to say that I agree with all that. Remembering that what we're trying to wrestle with here is the fiscal year 21. It's the year that doesn't begin until July 1st of 2020 and runs through June 30th of 2021. So it's even more, there is even more uncertainty to it, right? We've got 2.5 months before the year begins and then the 12 months that follows. But that said, based on the feedback that I think all of us have heard from folks in all the folks on the call today and prior, it does seem to me that we need to go back and look. And I would think that the spectrum.
That's not my dog.
It's my dog. Do you want me to put her down?
Don't put the dog down.
Okay.
Could you translate? What's the dog saying?
She's saying, I hear a man's voice. I have to bark.
That's right. Yeah, I forgot male gender. It seems like the end of the spectrum of the possibilities are something less, obviously, like on one end of the spectrum, something less than the 3.495% budget. And on the other end of the spectrum, I think what we've heard is a budget that has a $0 increase over the prior year. But those are kind of the anchors of the spectrum of possibilities. I would suggest, I would throw out to begin the discussion that you think about a middle ground, and that middle ground being something that achieves a 0% increase in the mill rate, or as close to that as we can get. And understanding the priorities of the day and covering the priorities of the day without, I think it was Dee who said, without impacting the day-to-day quality of the folks in Bethel.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, sir.
I wanted to thank you for the opportunity. I wanted to throw out one thing for your consideration before you carry on the discussion, which your board members may or may not know about. One of the most recent governor's orders, and I can't remember which number it was, there are now 27 of them, mandated that every town in Connecticut adopt some kind of a tax relief program. There are two options that are offered. One of them is a 90-day deferral on taxes to qualified taxpayers. The qualification is that anybody who can attest without much documentation, it's not difficult, who can attest that they either have suffered or will suffer a 20% drop in income due to the pandemic shutdown. And that would affect both our April tax billings and our June tax billings. So what that would do is, for those qualified individuals, it would push the April billing due date back to August 1 and the June billing back to October 1. The second of the options is reducing the annual interest rate that's charged by state law from 18% down to 3%. That would be a 0.25% per month. And again, under the governor's orders, every town must adopt one or the other or both of those things. And the deadline for us to do this is we have to notify the Office of Policy and Management by April 25th. So this will be on next week's Board of Selectmen agenda. So I wanted you to be aware of that because that may color your discussions as you debate the different issues.
Hey, Matt, you don't have to comment, but if people can't pay their taxes now, they're not going to be able to pay 2 payments in 90 days. That's the problem we're all talking about. They're struggling to pay it now. When a tenant normally gets behind on their rent, why are they going to be able to pay their rent twice in 1 month? All right.
This would be available to landlords as well.
Look, that is a very important decision to be made. It would be directly at the April 25th. Is there a Board of Selectmen meeting on April 25th?
April 21st, Tuesday.
The deadline's the 25th, but there'll be the
yes,
board.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay. I would encourage folks who are on this call, again, now we're all 113 participants, to dial in or zoom in to that call, because I think, Nick, you raised some points that are valid and need to be considered in that discussion. Again, the Board of Selectmen is where folks would need to discuss further the deadline that we have if they want to talk about it. The deadline that the Board of Finance have as the May 15th deadline. So that sounds like an important date for folks. That, again, April 21st, the Board of Selectmen meeting to discuss various topics.
Can I just say, Cynthia, I don't know how you got muted, so
Oh, no, I did it myself for a minute.
Okay.
But then I couldn't undo it.
Okay, that's fine. I didn't want you to think I did it.
No, I don't think you did it. I am paranoid, but not that paranoid.
All right, so kind of coming back to what are we going to try to do? Again, I would put out there as a suggestion that we at least use for a target a budget that results in a 0% increase in mill rate. There'll be an increase in spending, but a 0% increase in mill rate. And so with focusing again on the things that are important, the exigencies of the day, right? We want to make sure that we focus on health. So the health department gets fully funded. We want to make sure we focus on issues of safety, but not safe, we're not anything. So that would be the meeting department and the fire department. And what obviously would have to also take care of all of our contractual obligations for compensation items and debt service. So to that end, I would suggest, again, just to get things up on the board to start talking about, we would look at that budget that we adopted back on March 10th and think about the following changes. And we'll go around the horn again, making a list of these possible suggestions. The first suggestion would be to reduce debt service. And that's Department 440, account 5638. That's the general obligation ban principal. We would reduce that by $250,000. And let's be clear, the reason why we have that capability is that this board, being somewhat thoughtful 3 years ago, put a plan in place to get rid of our short-term debt. So that's gone. And now we have very little of ban outstanding that were not related to current construction. So we've opened ourselves up with some flexibility to reduce the ban debt service and take advantage of what likely are going to be very low long-term rates when we refinance in the July timeframe. So the first item of possible cut would be that $250,000 from debt service. Second suggestion perhaps would be to reduce road construction. That's near and dear to all of us. We've had a plan in place for a long time to try to get a regular rhythm to make sure that the town was never falling behind on road repair. You know, I think as a lot of people have said, these are important times, difficult times. And while the first item, the debt service, might not have any real implications to the quality of life. We understand construction does. But it would be, again, an item that we would consider to kind of get everybody on board with some further reductions.
Are you making a motion?
What's that?
I just want to know if there's going to be a motion or what, or we're just going to, are you making a motion to make that cut? That's all I want to know.
No, just putting like we've done.
Okay. All right.
Potential.
Gotcha.
Right.
Bob, can I ask one question? You said get to a 0% mill rate increase. Do we know what dollar amount decrease that is?
Yeah, I think what we've talked about before, and Bob K, correct me if I'm wrong, we need to reduce the current level of spending by $1,605,000.
Yeah, that's what I thought. That's the figure I have.
Can you say that number again, Bob? I couldn't hear you.
$1,605,000 was the spending cut we had talked about before to get us to this 0 mill rate increase.
And that's assuming the growth in the grant list was 973,000.
Yes.
Correct.
Got it.
Next item, the benefits line, and here to $200,000. And in
I got that.
the Department 390 accounts 5114 and 5115. Those are the pension accounts for both the town and the police department. What we had done in the initial budget was try to early adopt the revised standards for funding the pensions. We, through our pension advisor, apparently have been told that nobody has early adopted those new standards. And it seems like now might not be the time to do that. We would continue to fund the pensions fully under our base funding amount, but we would not get ahead of the funding, overfund it as we were hoping to do initially.
Hey, Bob, you didn't put a number on the roads, did you just miss, or you didn't have an idea what you wanted to cut?
I had a brain cramp, 200,000.
200.
So 250 on debt service, 200 on road construction, 200 on benefits. Utilities, we would take that down by 40,000. And again, that's by benefit of realizing the solar farm output. We had a study done from the person who kind of specializes in the area of that solar farm, and the thinking there is we would be able to realize $40,000 of utility savings, kind of all encompassing. The next area, and this is going to be probably the most controversial. We have spoken to a number of folks about this, so we're not making I'm not suggesting them, but it would be to cut the Board of Ed operating budget by $300,000.
I'm sorry, Bob, by how much?
$300,000. And then the final item, again, just final item on this suggested list, is to take $10,000 out of the contracted services building maintenance account, and that's Department 180, account 5101. If I do the math right on that list, that would be $1 million of cost takeouts. Again, the Board of Ed one is the most controversial. We think the other ones are not impacting quality of life. That's kind of my initial list. We can go around the horn again as to whether or not people, that's a very good move at the Ackerman House. go around the horn to see what folks think about that, and then maybe what other additional suggestions we have to consider in adjusting the budget. This time I'll go around in opposite direction. Wendy, you were in the number one position last time. Now I'll put you last.
I'll
Cynthia,
be last.
never last in our hearts.
Uh-uh.
Cynthia, starting with you.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
Thoughts
So,
and
oh,
ideas?
sorry. Well, all these things, I mean, look, I love the highway, funding the highway with cash. That's my thing. So that's the only thing that I'm wavering on. But, I mean, we have to do it. And frankly, I think that we have to go to a different level of thinking and not just say we're cutting the, dollar amount, because we have to I think we have to shift our thinking. I honestly, I talked to someone at the Labor Department yesterday and was told that the numbers that we have that go up to March 15th are going to look pretty good. But the person in the research department said that, I'm sorry, I'm trying to find a piece of paper, said that, that it was taken in a survey March 15th that going forward, those statistics are going to be very grim. I mean, the guy just said it. And his name was Pat Flaherty, by the way. He's in the research department. So I don't think we know what we're in for. I don't think this is going to be an overnight thing. I think, when people talk about the new normal, I don't think the new normal exists. This is so different from every single thing that we can talk about, trying to keep everything intact. But I think we have to get a little more organic, each department, and that includes the Board of Ed, because I understand that they have services in place that they, extend to students, but that is shifting. And it's not about getting back on a horse that's already run out of the barn. There's a lot of stuff that has to be shifted. I also don't believe that that it's fair to even put into play the fact that that the tax relief has to be decided April 25th, or that we won't get reimbursed for a year. It's not fair to put that burden of ponying up money up front on the taxpayer who may have their house foreclosed on. This isn't, and with all due respect to everybody that spoke, and I love public input, every person except maybe 3 or 4 were either teachers on the Board of Ed or had some stakeholding, or it was the first selectman. So I appreciate everyone's opinion. I don't think that represents the public. I think that the public hearing will represent more of the public, and I hope that will be very well attended. So that said, I think we got to get a little more organic about this. I don't have any specific things to cut, but I would have to say that the Board of Ed needs to really take a look at something other than the maintenance account. And one more thing, and I don't want to go on, I really don't, but their 1% that they can keep from their surplus at the end of the year. In Dr. Carver's memo, it said that we can't count on that. Well, they shouldn't count on that because it's an overage. It's a surplus. It's like counting on a bonus. Maybe you won't get enough to keep 1% that'll be even, significant. But that's the kind of thing we're looking at. And
Yep.
You ended abruptly. Was that intentionally?
Oh, me?
Yeah.
Oh, I know. I just sort of put the brakes on because I didn't want to talk and talk. So I said thank you.
So nothing to add to the list.
No, I don't right now. No. I said the Board of Ed needs to, it would be helpful if I will say this, it would be so helpful if there were departments who would come forward and say, we can save money here. I've not heard that. I've really only heard asking for more, with the exception of a few departments. I mean, it's easy to make a case for maybe no extra dog park for small dogs or something. That's easy. It's going to be really hard. And who never feels this? The unions. The unions, I'm sorry, no wiggle room there. So life goes on. And I think that's the problem. That's what I mean about organic. Things have to change and not just snipping away money on this budget. That's all.
Dee, I've got you in the number 2 hole.
Thanks, Bob. So here's my thoughts. And when I started, I said, I think we need to look at cuts that don't dramatically decrease our quality of life here in Bethel. I think most of the things that you talked about are probably in that bucket. I think people will see some degradation of our roads if we cut $200,000. And we're going to have to accept that, and we're going to have to own that if we're going to make that cut. I think $300,000 out of the Board of Ed is just too much. I think they're already struggling, and I think it's too much. So I'd be willing to vote for a decrease in the Board of Ed budget. I don't know that 300 is the number for me.
Nick, I've got you up next.
All right, I made a list. There was new hires in the Board of Ed, and it was total of $378,000. If you cut the $300,000, they still had $78,000 to hire that principal. I'm sorry, the administrator in the school. And I know they're getting another grade, so I think there's some wiggle room there. So I would support the $300,000 because $378,000 was all new hires. I think the majority of this town would be happy if they got the same services as last year. I understand there's debt services we have to pay for. We have to pay for contractual obligations. But in this world that we're living in, if I told my family we can go on the same vacations we went on last year, I think that's a big win for what everybody's living through right now. But the 460 account, I think, has to take a hit for $50,000. We may have to put off a gym. We may have to put off something in that maintenance account in this times we live in. So I would support a $50,000 cut at a 460. And 12 months goes by quick. If everything is fine, I'd be willing to spend the money next year. But right now, I would support a $50,000 cut there. Again, hiring anybody new in this environment, I think, is wrong. When there's people that are unemployed, there's people that are got a reduction in their pay. I have a hard time really supporting new hires. I would not hire another new officer. I would stay status quo. I'd be happy that we kept everybody employed in this town. And I would cut $54,000 out of a new officer. I know that's not a big win. A lot of people with again, emergency services, I would let that one go. But I definitely would say, hey, we need to do, maybe cut another car and do with what we have. We've got plenty of money in the highway department to repair these cars, but I know that's not going to fly. Road construction, I thought 100,000, but again, 200. You guys have done a good job with that, and for those repairs, replacement of roads. But I would support the bigger number because again, we're trying to go with a lower mill increase. Building department, 180, 5101. There's part-time money in there. There's 35,000. If we come out of this thing, I don't think there's going to be building. I think that's going to lag. We can always add that later on if things really pick up. I'd be in favor of cutting the part-time out of that. I know, I've said it to Matt before, we do more with less, and I get it. The government doesn't work that way like private industry, but I don't think the building permits are going to be there, or they're not going to be there right away. I'm in construction. Everybody's pulling back. You're going to get the roof repairs. You're going to get the windows, but you're not going to get big projects. So I would support cutting that 35,000. And then I don't know much about this, but the capital non-recurring, I know there's a bunch of money in there. Can we trim that 100 or 200,000 since everybody's taking a hit? Maybe we don't buy a truck, or maybe we don't buy computers. I know the first selectman comes to us and says what's needed, but I think there should be a cut. If the Board of Ed is going to take a hit, I think buying new things, I would support a $200,000 cut there. That's all the notes I have.
Robert.
Thanks, Bob. This is very painful, and I think is evident to the people listening on this call. There was a lot of discussion going on about these items. With the most painful, of course, I think, is the schools. Second painful would be, of course, the roads. The roads are something that we'll all feel as we keep repairing our vehicle tires. The schools, that hits very hard, because I think our community that we're proud of is proud because what our school board has built up and made as a institution that we all respect and like. But I don't see a clear path to getting down to a zero budget. And I stand by my earlier statement that there's a lot of pain out there in terms of not only people being laid off. We can see an unemployment in this area of the country increasing from what it was, 3-4% up to probably 15% easily. And the reabsorption of that that into the marketplace is not going to be particularly rapid. And even if it is, it's not going to necessarily be back at the same salary levels as they once were. We've seen that before in terms of people being reemployed at different jobs at perhaps a lower level. So I'm not looking for the zero rate. I'm looking for this is a compromise, I feel, and it takes us down to I don't know whether Bob or Brad is on the call to calculate where we would be with a cut of this nature in terms of what that would mean in a mill rate. Because Brad's not on the call, I don't believe.
I think he is. I think he's on.
Brad, can you give us an estimate based on the rates?
But Robert, just to make sure I'm probably being slow here. When you say
with the cuts that you described,
$1 million.
Correct. So that's taking us down to.
Well, I can tell you the other day I ran 950. I didn't go to $1 million. I went 950, and it brings the mill rate down to 33.74, a 0.33%, 0.33 increase. That's under 1%, 0.98, and it equates to $71.16. So another, $50,000 is going to bring it down a little bit more.
Okay.
So Bob, again, I'm probably just being the slowest here. Taking out $1 million brings the mill rate down to 0.33.
No, that's 950, Bob. I ran that the other day. I'm going to check to see if Brad is has a spreadsheet open.
Yep. Give me just. I'm trying to unmute Brad. Give me just a second. I got to find him.
The 950 gets a 0.33, a 0.98 percentage, and the $71.
Right.
And that is less than a 1% increase in the mill rate. Is that correct, Bob?
950 is
Yes.
9.8. Yeah.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
All right. So were you looking at there's a lot of numbers thrown around when I was trying to unmute myself. Are you looking at $1 million cut? What that would do to the mill rate? So the $1 million cut would reduce the mill rate increase from 0.8 to 0.3. And would make the mill rate increase percentage 0.91.
Brad, do you have that third number, the average home cost?
The average home, the increase year over year would be $65.79.
Robert, any more questions for Brad?
What's the average cost? What's the base?
The base is based on an estimated tax of a $217,000 assessed home.
That's been the same for a million. I mean, come on, it's got to be different. I mean, how much is that?
Isn't that the median home?
Yeah. Comes out to a fair market value of about 310, I think, right? 350.
In that area, yeah.
What are the taxes on that? You're saying that's $65 a year? Is that what you're saying?
Increase.
It's an increase.
Increase of an increase to what? I'm sorry to sound thick, but it's an increase to what? To what people are currently paying?
7249,
70.
7,250.
Yeah. Okay. So that, yeah. Okay. That puts it over 8. Let me see. That puts it up to 7,300. 7,310. All right. Well, okay. That works for you.
And can I ask a question of Brad or Bob? If we had an 850 decrease, what would the increase in the mill rate be?
Brett, I'm trying to, there you go. I'm trying to, okay.
All right, the $850,000 decrease. Give me 1 second to run that. So the mill rate increase would be 0.38 for a 1.13% increase, and the $217,000 assessed home would be $81.90 increase year over year.
But we could potentially gain 2 teachers.
Robert, any more questions?
That's all for me.
Brian, you're next on my lineup here.
Okay. I looked at the same cuts that you had to start to get us to $1 million. And then I had some other cuts, and then I had something else I wanted to talk to that, may help the situation and be able to put some stuff back in to lessen the pain without increasing the mill rate. So again, the 460, I had a possible cut of 50,000, assuming the Board of Ed, still had the $300,000 in the contingent fund, which again, they'll still be able to transfer money into at the end of this year. I had a $10,000 cut for the building department off of part-time, which would bring them back to basically last year's budget of part-time help. The tree warden, I cut another 10,000 out of that, which basically brought them a little over last year's budget in terms of the amount of work they could do. I took 5,000 out of salt, which still left a pretty healthy amount in that account from highway. Parks and Rec, I took another 5,000 out of building supplies, just supplies, because there's not going to be, I think, the amount of sports going on this summer. Unfortunately, Reading has already announced that they've canceled all summer activities, and I think a lot of towns are going to be forced to follow suit with that, because we definitely don't want to see a reoccurrence of what's going on. I also reduced their programs back to last year's funding, and again, that's based on the fact that I think a lot of programs are going to be canceled over the summer. I know they do a great job with that, and everything they do, brings in revenue. But again, I think in honesty, in the short term, people are going to be very cautious about sending kids and group activities based on what we've just been through. For the library, I know we put it in, but I took the 5,000 out, and I figured if we took it out, I know we don't have control over the lines, but what I was thinking is it still gives them the same amount of money they had last year to buy books and materials. That was one thing that I looked at. I also looked at the senior center. They had a $10,000 increase in activities. I reduced that by 5,000. Again, my thinking was, a lot of these group activities, especially for seniors, one of our most vulnerable populations, will still probably be lagging a little bit, past the summer. So that brought an additional $105,000 in cuts. which would bring the grand total to 1,105,000. Now, one way that I thought that some of this eventually could get put back in would be every dollar saved this budget, right, can get us to our number next year and possibly even past that, you know, depending on what the savings are. You know, I know generally in an average year, we transfer about $800,000 into the general fund, or 600, somewhere around there, you know, depending on what our uses are. If we took that money and put that into basically a special account or line for next year, and identified supplies and whatnot that we could take out of the budget this year, we could supplement it with that and make a lot of the cuts less painful. And in addition, get the mill rate to a 0 increase. You know, so I think there is a path forward where we could get to a 0 increase in the mill rate, and the cuts wouldn't look as bad because some of that could be put back in based on savings and using that money that we're going to have at the end of this budget cycle for next year. So that's kind of what my thought process was.
Could I sneak in a quick question to Bob Kozlowski because it pertains, or do you want me to wait? I'll be happy to wait.
Go ahead.
All right.
Okay, so I'm sorry, my brain just stopped. So I wrote, I apologize. All right, go on, because I wrote something down and now I can't find it, so I
Can I
apologize.
ask a quick question of Brian?
Yeah.
Brian, so you had 1.1 million of cuts by adding the additional things you just talked about to the existing proposal that Bob talked about, right?
Yeah, it was 1.105.
But 1.6 is where we would get to a 0% mill rate increase.
Right. And that's why I told you we could use the money that's left over from this year to create a special fund for next year where we could take some budget items out, and these savings can be used to pay for those items. The items would still be paid for and they would still have them. It would just come from the money that we have left over this year. We transfer into an account, almost like we had talked about sinking funds and stuff like that in the past, and we could use it to fund some of the items in next year's budget, thus keeping a 0% mill increase, but still providing the supplies and the items that they've requested.
So maybe I just don't understand, because there would be $500,000 additional that we would have to earmark to be handled by that special fund.
Right.
So what would be earmarked?
On an average year, we carry over 700,000 to 800,000 that we put into the general fund or use to pay off more short-term debt. So it's not a stretch of the imagination that we can get there by any means. We're there almost every single year. And some years it's even more than 700,000 to 800,000.
The problem, Brian, with that, Brian, the problem is going into next year's budget, the 22 budget, you're going to be behind $500,000.
I get it.
Yeah,
I understand
and
that.
really, I mean, we've done something similar to that with capital programs, and the rating agencies don't mind that. But when you're doing it to balance your budget or use it to mitigate the mill rate, they're not crazy about that.
Mr. Chairman,
I understand what you're
I
saying.
remember my question. I remember my question.
I would like to ask Mr. Kozlowski a question to Brian's point. That sounds like a fancy way of buying down the mill rate with non-lapsing funds, and I don't think you can do that. I mean, I would like to have the chair and Mr. Kozlowski research that, because that sounds like a dangerous thing to do.
I have
Wait, time out. Can I speak for that 1 second to Matt's comment? Other towns use the general fund balance to pay down their mill rate. Okay, it's something that happens in numerous towns. Ridgefield's done it. Other towns have done it. So it's not some new idea that they use money to buy down the mill rate for next year. You're correct. It's like a grant. It could put us in the rears for the next year's budget. But again, it gets us through this year. Hopefully we see the return in the third quarter or fourth quarter where, you know, some of the leading economists in the world think that, you know, the economy will take off in the third or fourth quarter. And it just gives us time to accomplish what we want to accomplish without, overly stopping these departments from, obtaining and completing their mission. My reluctance to raise the mill rate is because there's not a democratic process here. I understand what the governor did. I understand this is the cards that I've been dealt, but I can only go by last year's data. And last year's data, the budget was approved at a certain point. For me to raise taxes, and I'm already agreeing to raise spending, right? In principle, I'm just against it because of that there's no democratic process here. It's basically, circumventing that process. I prefer that we wait until June and see if these restrictions are over. Then it's much easier to present a budget that everyone could vote on. So that's just why I'm where I'm at.
Okay, just for the record, I don't dislike your idea, and I have had conversations with Bob Kozlowski and Bob Manfredo over the past couple of weeks. So I will leave the answer to them. Whether that's a good idea with our bond rating is not my concern. It's really your board's.
So Brian, just to follow up on that, I mean, yeah, I know Richfield does that a lot. They've been a AAA town for years and years and years. How long have we been AAA? And they view the rating agencies view us differently than they do Richfield.
Right.
If Little Bethel, who's just became a AAA 5, 10, 7 years ago, starts to do this, and in an economy where maybe we're under stress, and we're not. The town of Bethel has a nice fund balance right now, and we can accommodate the capital programs. But they don't like to see something like that happening all of a sudden.
Right, but Bob, let's say we took a short-term band out, and I know we're not, we've done a good job paying down the short-term debt. I said that at the last budget, deliberations. But bands are going to be at an all-time low right now. So, I mean, if we borrowed just short, and with the understanding that we're going to pay it off when that money comes in the end of 9 months, would that really hurt our bond rating? And again, you're much more versed on this, and I'm going to defer to your expertise. But I mean, it seems like it's almost free money. And if we even if we put the money in the general fund and then pay it off, are they really going to be upset that we paid that small amount off on short-term debt?
I don't think they would. But the other part of it is, in a year or less than a year, we're going to be bonding almost $40 million for the two schools. I don't want to do anything that's going to jeopardize that.
Right.
I don't want to drop from a AAA to a AA, and all of a sudden the increased cost is going to be tremendous.
Right. I get it.
And just to put this in context for folks, like, this is great. We still got over 100 people on this call. God bless you. You have you all on the Board of Finance. You have at least as much stamina as we do. Why this is important is that, to Bob Kozlowski's point, in July, or thereabouts, we're going to be going out to the public to raise $40 million of bonds. And that's to permanently refinance out the temporary financing we put in place for the school renovations. At that time, the rating agencies will be asked to look at our credit worthiness. Bob Kozlowski's point, we're currently a AAA, the highest possible rating. The rating agencies represent the bondholders, not the town of Bethel, right? So they will look at our debt from the perspective of, is that safe debt as an investor? In making that assessment, the rating agencies look to the practices of the municipality. And to the extent that the rating agencies see municipalities kind of using fund balance operating costs, they can see that a negative, and they'll ding the town in its rating. We asked our bond counsel advisor, we asked our bond advisor to price out what the difference would be in $2 million bond issuance if we were downgraded from AAA to single A. Now, granted, it's many, many notches down, but the rating agencies tend to be quick on the way down, much quicker so than they are on the way up. The difference in pricing on that $40 million bond issuance was estimated to be $4 million. So we're trying to maintain our AAA to avoid additional interest expenses. So by way of background, that's why this discussion is so important.
Well, Bob, can I ask you a question?
Okay, could I ask a question to Bob, please?
Bob?
Which one?
You, Bob Manfreda.
Yes.
So you were very interested in knowing the savings this year too. You know, what was your plan to use that towards next year's budget? Was there a plan that you had that wouldn't hurt our bond rating, kind of to what I'm saying right now?
No, great question. And I kind of thought this is where you were going, actually, Brian, is at the end of the year, look to what we have. And at least to my notes, and maybe my notes are incomplete, but the savings weren't that much. But we would have some savings at the end of the year. We would know what those numbers are because the books would be closed. And we would then, rather than putting that amount into our general fund, we would put it in a special account to be used in the following year. That is something the rating agencies, I believe, will accept because, again, to Bob Kay's point, the money is in the coffer and now we allocate it. So if we were to have savings, for example, at the end of the year, above and beyond the additional proceeds we typically get from the excess of the actual collection rate over our budgeted collection rate, and so true savings, and we were to capture those true savings and put them in a reserve account, I think that would be favorable by the rating.
So Bob, maybe what we do is just ask, at some point, to recess this meeting and ask that, we get some better numbers if we decide to have a special meeting next week or whenever we want to do that. So we have an idea on, hey, what are the real savings that we can, expect to have, talk to some department heads, see if there's anything they could do now to really help us with next year's budget and not, impact their ability to provide the services by, like I said, because let's face it, a lot of things are down right now. We're not, doing a lot of the same things we were. So if we could capture those savings now, it'll help us, so much into next year's budget. So that would be my suggestion, just to kind of, I think we let everyone speak about some, unless I'm missing
Except
someone.
me.
No, well, I'm sorry, Wendy. I forgot you went first. I would never cut you out. But after Wendy speaks, we'll have a really good idea of where everyone's heads are and thoughts, and maybe just take a recess and let's ask our department heads or the first selectman and the schools to tell us, what type of savings do you think we could have at the end of the year?
I did want to ask Bob my question that I've been trying to ask, and I did remember, if you don't mind. It has to do with the bond rating and exactly what Brian was talking about. May I, please? And then Wendy, I want you to talk the rest of the night.
Can I just ask Bob what he thinks about that? Whether that would be a good way to proceed after Wendy and Cynthia ask their question?
And is it again to this, Bob?
You, Bob. Yep, Bob Manfreda.
We'll come back to that, but yes. So, Brian, are you anything else?
Nothing.
Cynthia.
It was about the fund balance, and this has been a bone of contention over the years, and it's been suggested before. And I understand that the rating agencies don't want to see the town plugging up a sinking ship. But to Brian's point, there's got to be a way to structure it. I know that the first year I was on the Board of Finance, Matt Knickerbocker was proposing pretty much what Brian was suggesting and trying to find a mechanism that we could somehow configure the part of the fund balance to, I don't even want to use the word offset because I know how the rating agencies are, but I can't imagine that in a pandemic that rating agencies aren't going to have to be a little bit flexible. Not to the point where I just can't see the rating agencies slapping somebody town down 2 points. And my other question to Bob Kay is, do you know how long Richfield's been a AAA town? Just curious.
No,
Because you said they've been really long time.
I know it's a lot longer than us. we've been 5 to 7 years. We originally got it with Standard & Poor's.
But we pay good.
Came
We
in about-
pay.
Hmm?
So we've got a good record, we pay. And so, that should stand for
But
something.
interesting though, when
Unprecedented.
Fitch came in a year later, and I mentioned to them because they wanted to do the analysis, and I said, hey, we were just rated AAA by Standard & Poor's. They said, well, that's nice, but we want to see how a fund balance is going to go over the next couple of years. We want to see growth in that, and we want to see payments to the pension plan. And it wasn't for another year after that they actually gave us their AAA.
And just to the point now, I want to see in 2 or 3 years, everybody have a job, but I think things are going to change very dramatically. And that's why I'm thinking, to Brian's point, if we can find a way forward, that would be awesome to have a 0% increase to the mill rate. Thank you. Wendy, take it away.
Take it away, Wendy. I cannot support a $300,000 cut to the Board of Ed. That is just, to me, too severe. A lesser amount, not happy with, but I think we can do. I would also like to see if there is any money left in this current fiscal year, any savings that we can come up with, that money can be, like Bob Manfreda said, earmarked or put in a special account that we could use to offset some of the cuts that we may have to make. And, it's the real world. Yes, we're going to have a new norm, a no norm, a back to normal. We don't know. I wish we had some more time on this. I would like, if we could, to recess this meeting to a different time. I don't think that we're at that point that we can really come up with a solid number. I don't know. I just don't know.
Go ahead, Matt.
I agree with Wendy.
To the question about department heads, I just want the board to know that since this started 5-6 weeks ago, we are conducting 2 staff meetings a week, one for emergency operations and one for general operations. We go over the budget and at where we stand today every week. And I want to assure this board that we're not going to know anything other than what Bob Kozlowski has told you until we get to the very end of the year, and it's July. And we can't wait that long to have a budget. There are no major savings on the horizon. Bob has already given you every penny of what we can find so far. And just to let you know, to Nick's point, right now, building permit applications are not falling off yet. Neither are land use applications. If anything, the only thing that's happening is that the developers are waiting for the restrictions to be lifted so they can go back to work on things that are already in the pipeline. Those departments are busy. Nick, to your point, they might fall off in the future. They might not. I don't know. But right now they're busy. They're looking at a summer that is, if it holds, is almost as busy as it was last year when they got so far behind inputting building permits into the computer that they were 90 days late on that stuff. They were issuing the permits, but they were holding up COs and other things because, and this is why the overtime went up, because you have to bring people in to do that. So we're kind of rolling the dice. I hear what you're saying. Maybe it'll drop off. Maybe the developers will say there's not enough money in the pipeline to do this, but I can't make that prediction. So if you want to hold off a meeting to think about it, that's your decision, and I understand it. But don't think you're going to find any big numbers out of the department head. That's just not going to happen. I wish I could give you something, but we go through this every week with me and Bob and Brad and the department heads. Thank you. That's all.
Lisa Berg is physically waving her using the Zoom.
Pick me.
Dion.
Okay. Been patiently listening, and when it got to the part of the town department heads and stuff, I had to say, Matt's right. We have been having meetings every twice a week. My issue is that normally my budget's pretty flat. I don't increase anything. With this new COVID-19, the Secretary of State has now issued us a notice that they will be mailing out absentee ballot applications to every registered Republican and Democrat for the primary, which has been put off to June 2nd. With that being said, with people going to, they're not going to want to go to the poll. I will have to pay 65 cents to mail each and every ballot. Plus it costs another 50 cents for the ballot. So for each ballot we mail out, that's a huge increase for just my budget alone. And we have been discussing how each department head could cut. And I've heard from many other department heads, we're pretty low, we're pretty right where we have to be. And you know, I'm a pretty frugal person, but this is scary because this is something that I've never had to even anticipate, doing voting by mail. And that's a huge increase to my election account. And, you know, I can't process for November, if this is what we're going to be doing, voting by mail, 12,000 ballots with 3 people. So these are all things moving forward in the next budget season that are things that have to be considered as well. The effects of this virus on our budgets in terms of added expense, not just saving. So that's all I had to say.
I guess I'd maybe try to summarize all of that with a question to Bob K, and I think we know the answer, but I think what you're telling us is there really are no savings. You don't see any savings from the current world as impacting the fiscal 2020 budget.
No, in fact, talking to the different department heads at the meetings that Matt had mentioned, I mean, they all talk about additional expenses that they're going to be incurring, and not savings. I mean, there are some savings, but it seems like the expenses are more prominent than the savings are, especially going into next year. You know, like Matt had said, I mean, the building department and planning, they're planning on a big second and third quarter. I know nobody has a crystal ball, but that's what it looks like. And when what Lisa just said, you know, as far as you know, having to send out the ballots and then maybe have additional help in order to sort those when they come back in. I mean, it's something we've never gone through before. So
take the point. I think what we're hearing from a few of the members is, to the extent there were savings, that could take the place of additional cuts. And that might be something that gets somebody from a position of question to a yes. So I think what you're telling us is we're not going to have that flexibility.
I mean, Bob, when you look at our budget overall, I mean, like the Board of Ed is 85% laborers. I mean, we're probably pretty close to that, maybe a little bit less because we've got the benefits and the debt service, you know. But yeah, I mean, there's going around the town hall. I go around in my mind, just, you know, from one side to the other. There's no major cuts that I could see, any savings that I could see.
I think Wendy, Brian, that's kind of a response, right, to whether there are savings or not. We are at 10 o'clock, which likely means we should recess to come back tomorrow to go through this list. But it would be for purposes of going through this list, not necessarily also additional savings.
Nick has to be unmuted.
Thank you. I'm good right now. Thank you.
Okay.
I also noticed in the comment, there's a lot of good comments I see from Nick. I'm assuming that's Nick Hoffman, from Greg, who I don't know, and then Bill Hillman pertaining to what the rating agencies do. I'd be happy to talk to anybody about that. From my personal life, I've got a lot of experience with working with the rating agencies, but to the extent people have additional perspectives, I think we'd love to hear that. From my perspective, in my work environment, we've, to Bob K's point, tried to be very, very clean from how the rating agencies would evaluate our operations. But again, to the extent Nick or Greg or Bill, you have some other view, would love to hear that. With all that said, before I make the motion, I'll ask the Board of Finance members, how do folks think about recessing for tonight, coming back tomorrow night to go through the list? Today's what? Today's Tuesday?
14th.
Do we want to come back tomorrow night or Thursday night?
I would prefer Thursday just to give a day between to, think and stuff.
I'm gonna go sideways now. Nick?
Oh, I know, Graham.
I'm okay because everybody's stuck home, but I'm not sure there's enough time to post an agenda for a 7 o'clock meeting tomorrow. So
No, we can't do a meeting tomorrow.
Be a recess. It's not.
If you recess.
Oh, just keep this meeting going. I got you.
Right.
Yeah.
We can do that.
Cindy, tomorrow night or Thursday night?
Well, I'm not going out either. I do like the idea of perhaps maybe having a night in between to think about it, but I am more than happy to go with the masses, but I do think that, there's stuff that we need to think about.
Bob K?
I'm here. Either night is fine with me.
Ian, coordinator extraordinaire.
My son turns 18 tomorrow. Really like to be able to celebrate with him. If we could do it Thursday.
We can sing to him.
All right.
We have
I'm going
94 people that can sing to him.
I know, we got a whole choir.
Yeah.
I would make a motion.
Robert and Brian, whether they want to go tomorrow night or Thursday.
No,
Even
I'm
if
gonna
you
make.
guys made me come on my birthday, I will grant Dion her son's 18th birthday party.
And you know what, Brian? If it was my birthday, I would never even mention it. But since it's
I'm just
my
teasing.
child's,
I'm fine with
We
Thursday.
find out somehow.
Brian, is today your birthday?
No, February
Yeah.
10th was my birthday.
Oh, sorry.
You didn't say happy
birthday.
birthday to me.
I think I've actually been to a meeting on my birthday before.
Robert D. How
I'm fine with Thursday. I'll use tomorrow night to think about what it was like when I was 18.
Exactly.
Me
Yeah, in quarantine with your parents.
Trapped on a small boat.
With that, I guess it's a motion to recess this until Thursday at 7 p.m.
Second.
Sounds good.
All those in favor? I'm sorry,
Bye.
Bye.
opposed? All right. We are recessed until Thursday at 7 p.m. And
Perfect.
you'll just redo this Zoom thing?
Yes.
All right. All right.
Yep.
Thank you, Dion, for managing this whole thing.
Yeah, thank y'all. Thanks for the grace, guys. Appreciate it. Have a good night.
Bye.
Good night. So we just
Yes.
hit keep meeting and then we're done, right?
Yep, and thank you for everybody that participated.
Thank you, Dana.
Boy, it's dropping off.
Bye.
Wow.